Dude, that gal was so tired. And I'm sure she's like, you look like you aged 30 years. And I'm like, oh, literally, thank you.
At least she's the kind of friend who'll just tell you the truth. Whether you wanna hear it or not. Oh, funny, yeah, anyway, she just had a rough night. Cool.
Does it help?
She's waiting, this is fall break this week.
Okay.
Really looking forward to it. My wife would go home.
That's what my sister, so she teaches at John
She would just go
Hancock
home.
in Eagle Mountain.
She's supposed to teach. She carries a blanket.
It's so far away.
My wife.
It's so far
A
away.
blanket or
And I'm
jacket.
like, you have to get closer. But she loves it.
She's very sensitive to.
Yeah, she will, but I'm like, geez. I was hoping she would get a job
Nick
with her.
If
If when they say it's closing and all the teachers scattered, I was hoping that jobs would open up and she could get a job there in town.
Then she'd have to find a new one a year later.
Yeah, but once you're in the district, then they just rearrange. So she at least
My
gets
wife
her
asks
to
me
the-
that every night, and I just don't.
2 hours.
It's certainly could be done.
Well, they've got the one in Pleasant Grove off of 100 East, and then the one clear out in Eagle Mountain. It is so far. Like, there's a mountain, and it's clear around the mountain. So,
Oh, wait, I'm almost out of your hair.
That was so rewarding, didn't it, wasn't it?
Oh, I
You'll
like,
have 2 more years till I get it
I
on.
like that you're messing with me.
What else? I mean, when you get chunky, you have to kind of be a little rambunctious, right?
You drunk?
Yes. I'm not counting.
I have to psych myself up to come anymore. No.
No, but my husband is kind of tired of the grumbles about Sunday nights. You're like, because I had no time today, so I was all there Sunday night. It's like, are you going to come in and play family games? I can't.
My Monday for recovery from Sunday. Totally a new cow on Monday. It's like still weird.
And then I would just draw a red line, because you can have a red line.
Listen to scouts and scratches and speak.
I was amazed how much people.
Everyone's submitting questions. You want me to read this on the fly and ask this question? And I was just like, God, this is wide open. Idiots up there.
We learned that here tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
When somebody got up and went off on marijuana questions. And I just, we can't do that.
That's the only
Has
time.
nothing to do with the city issue either. I'm sorry, I didn't do it. I mean, I should, I did. What?
I can do either. She is
In all these neighborhoods, it was every.
I know she had planned
Oh,
on
I gotta shift. Oh, it's a round one. Oh, it's a left. Oh, it's a thick, you know, it's so crazy. I have to walk up and adjust my brain like, okay, how am I gonna do this? Some don't fit.
If the council has more questions.
He said, well, your side, the right one's better than hers. Your side, the right one works here. Steve said the left one works here. Just yours on the right and his on the left.
But that's exactly the information that I appreciate.
The minute I got home, I was like,
It's ours are different.
to see how it went.
Oh, I see.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, this just,
I didn't see in the eyes, but it's hard to see.
16.
yeah, they just calm, cool,
I
relaxed.
know how it was. Fireworks, right?
Let me, send you.
Isn't that why people sometimes do warnings, is to see the cars?
My wife was just, and she says, I walked in and saw the booth and
Don't need to do that again, right? Are you gonna go for a fortune?
oh, too soon probably to decide that. Plenty. So, if that told you what maybe you needed to know, that may have told you what you needed to know.
It would just all, I guess, that's the way it sits now in case something drastic comes up, right? Like somebody wants to spend all the road money on something else, right?
Well, I would never
Hot dog
think
stand.
that it needed.
All right, are we ready to begin? In a moment. All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have one council member that will be joining us shortly. So I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening, Monday, October 16th, here in the Council City Chambers. I will be conducting Mayor Carolyn Lundberg along here with our council. We do have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. We are going to begin first with invocation given by Councilmember Darrell Magleby, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be offered by our staff member Caleb Asbell.
Our gracious eternal Father, we are indeed grateful for the many blessings that are bestowed upon us each day. We're grateful to live in this wonderful country and to reside in this beautiful city of Lindon. We're grateful for the association with one another and the privileges we have here as we live our lives. We pray this night that the Spirit will be with us, that we might make decisions that are in the best interest of the city, that we might collaborate and work together to make the best decisions for this wonderful place. We are grateful again for all we have and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Will everyone please stand up and repeat the pledge with me?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Caleb. You all probably recognize him as being everywhere with Alan at Lindon Days and throughout the city with our Parks and Rec department. Thank you so much. All right, we will now have our call to order, and I'll start here on my left.
Randy Powell, present.
Van Broderick, present.
Carolyn Lundberg, present.
Darrell Magleby, present.
All right, and as I mentioned, we're expecting Councilmember Van Cherry in a moment, and then Councilmember Hoyt is excused and is out of town tonight. All right, moving on to item number 2, presentations and announcements. If there are any announcements from staff or council members.
My grandson turned 4 yesterday.
Awesome.
Why not?
Congratulations, that's wonderful. All right, moving on to item number 3. This is our open session for public comment for items that are not listed on tonight's agenda, which is at the front of the room. So we would welcome anyone to come forward and sit down here at the table and state your name, and we'll keep it brief. Thank you very much.
My name's Maxine Smith, and I've come to you before and had Adam also come, as I have 3 things I would like to address with the city tonight. Since we had ground on State Street, it's just, this is brief, but we wanted to build the city, and it's where Lindon Storage is. And of course, that was all a Smith Farm. Part of it still is in the Smith Farm. And the city said we didn't want any animals in there. So we sold that and bought the 2 acres on 250 South, 280 West. And they give us a right-of-way, 16 feet. And so when we went down to get to the county, they said there needs to be a public road in there because the ground was divided into 5 sections now. And the city said build as is. So our home was based on that 16-foot right-of-way, and we built that in '74. And then we get, 3 years later, we get letters from the acting mayor, who was Doug Johnson, and this letter is dated the 28th of June, '77. And then also one from William Williams, city administrator, in October 10th of '77. All existing homes would connect to the Lindon sewer for $250. I come to the city and I said, how do we do that when we don't have any ground? Because we had culinary water and natural gas in that 16 feet. And they said, oh, you have to build. You have to put it in. And I said, I don't have any ground and no public road. And so a city employee said, make a deposit again for that. And I did. I have a copy of the ticket number, 1172, dated September 25th, 1978, signed by Wilma Taylor, that we paid $25 against the $250, a remaining balance of $225. And so it went on. And so from the time we bought that property, there was never a road in there until 20 years later. And it turned out that later they needed to connect on to the home, and the city would not honor these letters of existing and made full price. And so I'm talking that my daughter was living in the home, lives in there now. So number one, I'm asking the city to refund the $25 that you have spent on something else. An interest rate of starting at 9%, and a cash advance today is 29.9%. So I'm asking a refund on that. And then when we built our existing home to accommodate parents that also lived here in Lindon, in 1995, Marcia Peterson said we had to put in curb gutter and sidewalk. Well, Joe Martell had developed the ground, developed that one large piece now into 4, and was to put curb gutter and sidewalk in. And he come to our home, him and his wife, and we said, yeah, we want curb and gutter because the water comes down. And we paid $1,896 for curb gutter and sidewalk, and that was in '95. And I've come to you before, that is still not there. I had Adam, and he invited the city engineer to come, because now, next year, there's no sense of me spraying, fertilizing, mowing, and watering that needs to be my sidewalk. And so I'm asking, number 2, that sidewalk be put in. And then the third one is that Adam and the city engineer walked the west line, because that is the property of Harris that was developed into Heritage Farm. And she give her grandkids that, but from the original piece now is 9 because of development. We were not contacted by the city nor the developer in writing or personally, and so they've taken away, and Adam has seen how bad it is. Also, I've had Mr. Hess and Hogarth both there, and they've been there several times looking at it, because I have 2 fences, T-posts, boards, and in one place 3, trying to retain my ground that I bought and pay taxes on. And they said they would get back with me. I have heard from no one. I called again last week, and they said they would leave and tell me what they've decided, because I need that retaining wall to retain mine. And last year I had a gentleman for the fire marshal come, because of the Lundquist property has not been cleaned up, weeds or material, for 9 years. And that was to be done last year. It was not done, and he has, in this last week, removed some mining pipe, big, huge. But the weeds issue, as of 4 o'clock tonight, has never been resolved. So I have all kinds of critters, moles, gophers, and they have deteriorated my bank. And so where I walk to maintain, time winter comes and it erodes more, I will not be able to maintain my fences on my property or walk on my property. So I'm asking for that retaining wall. Those are the three things I've come to address tonight.
All right. Well, that is a long history you're sharing, so thank you for that background and a lot of information. This sounds like something staff has been engaged with you at different points, and you're looking for resolution on 3 totally different things. And I don't know that we have time right here in the public meeting to address all 3 of these in and of themselves. Is this,
These
any of
are
this
all
new?
items that we've met with Maxine a few times on, and it may be good for you and I to sit down together again. We've sent you a response on all 3 of these items before. I'm looking at an email I pulled up I sent you in 2019, and then you came to the council again in 2022, and we addressed it again then. So that may be the best thing, is if we refresh you on our responses on those items, Maxine.
Can I have it in writing?
I will give you copies of what we already gave you in writing.
No,
So
to the answers to these 3 questions.
I have that in writing that I've sent you, and I'll produce another copy of that if you want to set up a time to meet with me.
Well,
Is there any updated, anything to be updated since that point?
I've never heard from,
Would you like me to get into all 3 of those issues, or
Provide the documentation again.
I can provide
those
that
answers.
documentation, yes. Yeah.
because I've never been, other than Adam says he doesn't believe my records for the deposit and the connection fee to the sewer on the home.
The $25.
Yeah, and I shouldn't even be here going against me paying curb, gutter, and sidewalk for somebody who come in and developed 4 more and turning it into 9 lots. The original is 9 lots.
Right.
And you wanted my son-in-law, who was an engineer, to come and talk to you and the city engineer, but he was working full-time, running 4 plants. He does not have time to come for something the city should have done.
And that was just to help him understand. You had actually suggested that would
No, I
maybe be a good
didn't
idea,
suggest it.
Maxine. Well, I don't know your son-in-law, and so I don't know how I would receive that information, so.
Well,
That was something
I
that
didn't
you
bother him
encouraged.
because he was working full-time.
All right. We will make sure staff circles back with you on this.
I'll give you a call, Maxine. We'll set up another appointment to go through those same discussion again.
Face-to-face, and then also documentation.
Can I get
being a-
answers to him? Because that retaining wall is a major issue with the animals, the deer, the erosion. And if it erodes even worse, I've got nothing to hold the large animals. That subdivision, mine's always been agriculture. So I'd like 3 definite answers.
All right, we
Mayor,
heard you.
Could I
In
suggest that
writing.
we make sure that those are hard copies as well as an email?
I will do that.
I think that
Meeting.
would help.
Yes, at the meeting, the face-to-face meeting. Very good. All right, have a good evening. All right, any other comments to the council? All right, seeing none, we will move on then to item number 4, our council reports. And whomever is ready, to my left or right?
Quick and short.
Okay.
Not a lot to report, just that the senior center will be having a fair tomorrow, and I did not bring the hours. Do you happen to remember the hours, Alan, for me?
I'll look them up and I'll have your hours. I think it's right after lunch.
That's what I was thinking, yeah, right after lunch. So more information is available on the website, and outside of that, we've got our youth council's been having some great meetings. They conducted their very first council meeting all by themselves this last Monday, and they did a fabulous job. Looking forward to all the great things they have in front of them. Education grants, we'll be getting to those, as I said last time, and I think that's all else I have.
10:30 to 1.
10:30 to 1. Thank you so much, Alan.
All right, thank you very much.
Just one item that I had mentioned, we had the Meet the Candidates night last Thursday, October 12th. And just want to express appreciation to our staff and everybody here for putting on a great event, and for those that participated. It's great to live in a city where good people live and are willing to come and help and serve. So, and just remind people to vote when the
Absolutely.
time comes to vote by mail.
Absolutely. We want to see a good turnout, good community engagement, civic engagement. All right, Councilmember Magalby.
I had the opportunity to watch that by Zoom on the following morning, and I was really impressed with how that was run, and the youth council did a really good job, and I was really, really impressed with our candidates, and I will rest well at night knowing that someone's going to replace me well. So I have nothing else to report.
All right, very good. And I just wanted to commend staff as well. We had, the room was beautifully decorated. Kathy Musman here and Brittany Ladler, and then Adam set up a really great format. So we just really appreciate staff for putting together a really professional candidate night. It was very positive. I really appreciate that we do not have combative debate format, but something that's more positive, and hopefully the community can get to know the candidates. All right. My only thing to report is when I recently attended the Mountain Land Association of Governments meeting, it was mentioned that in this upcoming legislative session, as you all know, some of our sister cities have enacted a road fee in their utility billings, and that was contested in court, and then it was upheld. But and Lindon has not chosen to participate in such a fee, but that is something that is going to be looked at by the legislature this year, how those will be regulated and how they make sense. So anyway, just was an interesting thing to note, that you'll be hearing about that in the upcoming legislative session. All right, we will now move on to our administrator's report. I'll turn this over to Mr. Cowie.
Just some general announcements there that you can see. The secondary water should be turned off this week. It will drain as people continue to use it over the next few days. So just as an FYI. And I think that's all I have, Mayor. So,
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, and then moving forward now, we will have the approval of the minutes from our October 2nd meeting. If council's had a moment to review, any changes or?
I have a couple that I've
Please.
noticed, that on page 11 of the packet, I think it is 8 of the minutes, on lines 8 and 11, the vote is not correct. So it has, me on line 8 is saying a yay, and it was a nay, and then Hoyt has a nay, and he was a yay. And then on, make sure that, see that? Okay. And then on page, let's see, 12 of the packet, 9 of the, I'm thinking I'm doing it right, in my actual comment there regarding the mini roundabouts, Kathy, I think it's somewhere in between 16 and 24. If we could add in something to the effect of that during that discussion that I requested that they look at doing something that is, add some attractiveness that is flat, some sort of flat design perhaps on that mini roundabout. I meant to send this to you earlier so you didn't have to do it on the fly. So, but if we can add that into that, that was missing. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any other changes or additions?
None.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 2nd, 2023.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Magalby, seconded by Councilmember Broderick. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. All right, this takes us on to item number 7, Typically, the consent agenda are items that do not require public comment. Tonight, we do not have anything, so we'll move ahead on item number 8. And I just have a quick question for staff. Do we need to change agenda item number 11, timing-wise? Are we good on that communication? With Ms. Jamie Jensen? Okay. All right, wonderful. All right, and I will welcome our planner,
Well,
Mary Burns
do we
here. We're
make-
going to have a public hearing.
I make a motion to
thank
open a
you.
public hearing.
I'll second.
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion by Councilmember Broderick and seconded by Councilmember Powell to open a public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are now in a public hearing to listen to some modifications to our fines. All right?
Yes, thank you so much, Mayor. So yes, this item is an ordinance amendment to amend the nuisance building and zoning violation fines in our code. Right now, our code states that if you have a violation, let's say you're a residential homeowner and maybe you have, you know, a lot of weeds on your property, your neighbors call in, and so our code enforcement officer sends you a letter. We go through the whole code enforcement process, and if by the end of that process there's still no change or no progress, then currently we would require that homeowner to pay $200 per day until those weeds are cut. And then for non-residential, so commercial or industrial, it's $400 per day. And also, right now in our code, it states that these violations are a Class B or Class C misdemeanor. And then, you know, that would be a nuisance example. There's also the zoning and then the building code as well. So since we adopted those fines, the state code has changed. Now State Code 103703 states that we cannot impose a criminal penalty greater than an infraction, and the civil penalty, so the fines cannot exceed the maximum Class B misdemeanor fine. It's very, I mean, state code, right? Which is $1,000, and then a city cannot issue more than one infraction within a 14-day period for an ongoing violation. So we're proposing to change our current language in the code to the state code. So going back to that same example, this would mean that if we go through the whole code enforcement process and those weeds, there is no, and again, this is progress. If there's no progress, the weeds haven't been cut at all, then that means in a residential area, we would charge the homeowner or the property owner $500 for every 14 days or 2 weeks that you know is continuing, that the violation is ongoing. And then in commercial, industrial places, it would be the full $1,000. The reason why we decided to take it down for residential is because we're generally trying to, I mean, the whole goal of code enforcement is to get these violations resolved. Our goal is not the fines, but generally with the residents of Lindon, we've had a lower fine amount. So that's why it's that 500 instead of the full 1,000. So this ordinance amendment, oh, and I do want to say that if there is a property, let's say a commercial property that maybe they have a ton of junk, they have, you know, I mean, this is one that's ongoing, they have boats parked all over the road, a lot of weeds, you know, clear view issues, that kind of thing. If there is a lot of violations, that fine amount is per violation. So if you have 5 violations on your commercial property, then that would be $5,000 every 2 weeks. So it does add up in that way. But like I said, the ultimate goal for all code enforcement, at least our view of code enforcement, and I'm sure you share this view, is that we want to help people come into compliance. We're not wanting to create, you know, bad relationships or anything. We just are wanting that code compliance. So we work with people all the time on that kind of thing. So yeah, this ordinance amendment would amend the nuisance code to reflect that new language. It would also amend the building code chapter in the Lindon City Code. Of course, I do want to say that the building official, I mean, there's also the International Building Code itself, and that has other enforcement requirements that the building official will be looking at. But for the purposes of Lindon City Code and buildings. That's the new language that we're proposing today. There's also the zoning code, and then there's a small section in the floodplain code, which is a part of the zoning code, that has that same 200, 400 that we're proposing to change to the 500, 1,000 language. So Lindon Code Enforcement, me and Jacob, we have been using this state code for the past year, just because, I mean, we can't enforce that city code when the state code says something completely different. So we actually have been using the state code for a while now. So this ordinance would just ensure that city code matches state code. And because this is already such a delicate area for staff, it would just obviously really help to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row when we send out these notices. And it has taken a while to get this in front of you, but we think we've got everything straightened out. Basically this this ordinance amendment is to ensure that everything matches in both codes, which we feel is really important. Any questions on that?
Could you tell us what up to means? I don't know if that's you or that's Brian needs to clarify the up to.
It's to the discretion of the judge. The judge can take a look at those fines and decide and formulate them. And honestly, in the 20 years that I prosecuted under the old code, I can think of one time the judge actually ended up imposing a fine because, like Mary was so
Education.
explaining, it's just bringing it into compliance. This gives a little bit of leverage. We seldom get to the point where we're actually filing these charges, but the up to is the discretion of the judge.
So this would not be a bill, basically, for lack of a better term, that's sent to the homeowner or a violator for doing that. This is actually imposed by the judge himself.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in our code enforcement notices, we do say the exact language. So we say up to $500 or however it is, and we find that sometimes helps to kick people into gear to get their violations under control. So yeah.
Thank you.
Leverage.
Yes.
Yeah, leverage. In the best way.
Question, do these violations come from the public, or is it from our internal employees that go out and find these, or is it a matter of both?
Yeah, so when it was just me doing code enforcement, and it has been just the planner doing code enforcement for a number, up until last year, it was all complaint driven. Now it is Jacob. Jacob is our part-time code enforcement officer, so he does go around and he looks for things. He's a little bit more proactive in that, but right now, I mean, summertime really gets busy because everyone's weeds are growing. So for this entire summer, he's really just been doing complaints because we've gotten so many. But as it goes, as the complaints kind of calm, I'm sure he'll be out there looking. And again, we're not trying to, like I said, it's so delicate. Code enforcement makes people angry, and that's just how it is. And of course it would. But I mean, Jacob's really lovely guy, so that certainly helps. And we just want to make sure that everything in our code matches what we're doing on the ground.
And I'd like to commend staff as well. They really do try to have a friendly interaction. It's not, here's a fine, slap on, coming down on people with a penalty.
Exactly.
I've had residents reach out, when they've had a health issue or a legitimate barrier or obstacle. Staff does work with them. And again, it's about showing progress with them, and they work with the resident or the business.
Yeah,
So-
often this is just an aside. Often Jacob will send out, he just calls them non-traditional code enforcement notices, where it's all about education. So he is just telling the person, I know you may not have known this, but your trailer has been on the road for 3 months, and we actually don't allow that. If you could park it on your property, like, this isn't a traditional code enforcement. I'm just giving you the code. I'm letting you read it. And if nothing happens, within the next month, then we'll go in with
Then he sends you.
something. No, I'm not the one. But then he'll go ahead and send some type of notice with these fines, and yeah, it's a little bit more
All right,
forceful,
any other
maybe.
questions from council? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'd invite anyone from the public as well, if they have any questions or comments. All right,
I'll make
I
a
make a
motion.
motion to close the public hearing.
all right, thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Broderick to close the public hearing, seconded by Councilmember Magalby. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now bringing this back to you, council. If you feel like there's any further discussion, I'd entertain a motion. If not,
I don't have any questions. I'm willing to make a motion if anyone wants to listen. I move to approve ordinance 2023-20-0 to modify the fines for violations of the zoning, nuisance, building, and floodplain ordinances as presented.
I'll second.
all right, very good. We have a motion by Councilmember Powell, seconded by Councilmember Magalby. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that looks unanimous. All right, thank you so much. All right, we're moving on now to item number 9, which is also a public hearing, and these are further recommendations from our Planning Commission regarding the clear code. So,
I make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
okay, motion by Councilmember Broderick, seconded by Councilmember Powell to open a public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, Mary. We are now in a public hearing.
Okay, thank you so much. So yeah, this ordinance amendment is regarding the clear view around driveways, and it's really aimed at increasing safety for motorists and pedestrians as people back out and drive out of driveways in residential and commercial areas. So I'll go through some scenarios and just kind of keep that in mind. First, I wanted to quickly talk about what a clear view is. The more known version is the clear view corner on corner lots. So that's just an area that needs to be clear of obstructions on a corner to preserve a safe sight distance for drivers. If you can imagine going right on a corner, you don't want a big, 6-foot vinyl fence in the way. You want to be able to see if anyone's coming, or if you're turning left, things like that. So that's what a clear view area is. So we have a 40-foot clear view triangle for all of our corner lots in the city. And most cities require that same triangle. That means that we don't allow view obscuring fences, dense vegetation, commercial signs taller than 3 feet. 3 feet is really, I talked to the engineers about this, and 3 feet is that kind of sweet spot of, if something's 3 feet tall, if you're in a really small passenger car, you can still see over it. But once you get taller than that, depending on what car, you may not be able to see over it. So anything 3 feet tall or less that's view obscuring can be in these clear view areas. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself, but what I'm saying is this corner lot clear view, this 40-foot triangle, is something that staff enforces regularly. For health and safety reasons. So something that Lindon has not addressed in their code is a clear view area for driveways. So this would be the area where the driveway and the street right-of-way line connect. As shown in this example, these red triangles here, we're proposing a 15-foot clear view triangle. I'll go a little bit more into why in a little bit. But I wanted to talk about the 3 reasons why we're bringing this ordinance to you and why we brought it to the Planning Commission. So number 1, this is a safety measure for homeowners as they back out of their driveway, so they can see the pedestrians, cyclists, the kids walking on the street. The engineers mentioned the influx of e-scooters and e-bikes and these motorized forms of transportation that technically aren't allowed on the sidewalk, but of course, a lot of people still drive them on the sidewalk very fast, and this would hopefully allow for a little bit more time to react to something of that sort coming down your driveway as you're backing out or as you're pulling forward. Also, trying to preserve a clear view so that as you're pulling forward out of your driveway, you can see oncoming traffic. I'm thinking of the people on Center Street wanting to make sure they can see what's going on as they're backing out or pulling in or pulling out, that kind of thing.
Now, real quick, this would only apply
Yeah.
This isn't something we're gonna go around and start enforcing on every single property.
Sorry, I was gonna get to that, but, yeah, this is not something we're going to enforce. This is something that we'll look at, as we go forward with new landscaping plans, new commercial plans, signage, permits, and then we have a fence permit application as well. So this is something that we'll enforce going forward. It's not something that we're going to go backwards in time and enforce. Everyone who currently has Clearview issues, they're definitely grandfathered in. So yeah, sorry, I should have said that in the beginning. And I wanted to talk about what it would look like in commercial zones. We have this little example here. So if this is the street and this is a driveway, these red areas, we're requiring them to be completely free. This represents one of those long Suburbans, or about 18 or so feet long. So we're wanting to make sure that they are able to see, again, oncoming traffic, pedestrians on the road, that kind of thing. This would also apply to, like I was talking about, signs. Signs is something you'd mostly see in commercial areas, most likely. We want to make sure signs aren't taller than 3 feet in this area. Number 2, it also provides staff direction. So we have been using this Clearview idea as a best practice in our fence permits for a while. So with a fence permit, someone has to apply if they want their fence to be close to their front or their street side property line. So when people have applied, we've sent them this best practice, but of course it's not an actual requirement. So we haven't received too much pushback, but we want to anticipate that if that comes, we want to be able to say, actually, this is something that Planning Commission, City Council, and staff have thought about, and we do think it is important to preserve that clear view with any new fence permits that come in. And then with commercial plans, this would help us. I mean, with contractors, developers, they usually like a little, code reference within commercial plans, and so that just also really helps with staff direction for that. And then third reason is the Utah legislature has been trying to get cities to provide plain language for standards. They've been trying to get away from this idea of discretion. And as cities, maybe we love discretion, but it can create confusion. We're presenting this as a solution to this issue so that homeowners, contractors, developers, they'll be able to look in our code, find the exact requirements. They don't have to call and ask and go through a whole process. They will just know the requirements. And of course, they can always call and ask as well. But that's, kind of the point is to try and reduce any confusion. So the city engineers did work with us on what the Clearview distance should be. We decided based on that length of a longer Suburban, and then this is a 22-foot Sprinter van. So that's the longest Sprinter van that NOAA could find. Just as an example of one of the bigger cars that we could see in a residential area. We decided that a 15-foot clear view triangle would allow even that 22-foot Sprinter van to see a good portion of the sidewalk and road. You can kind of see that if this is where, it's not showing. Okay, well, if you see that lower vehicle, if you look where the driver would be sitting, he'll still be able to see all the way out to the sidewalk, with a 15-foot clear view area.
Question.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I should know this, maybe it's self-explanatory, but say, for example, this is street, we have on-street parking.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we handle, you have a family reunion, you have across the street, the neighbor's having a big anniversary party or whatever. What about if someone I see this all the time.
Comes and parks right there.
And someone parks right.
Mm-hmm.
People do that. They don't block the driveway, but they get close enough.
They get very close. Yeah.
How do you handle that?
We haven't put that into this ordinance. This is just for, on people's properties and where they need to keep it clear on their property. Something like that. I don't know if there's any precedence. I know, of course, that you can't park, too close to an intersection or a fire hydrant, but I'm not sure if there's any precedence of parking too close to the driveway, but that's certainly,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
You can
something
still
we
have
might
that
need to look
15
into.
foot clear, that triangle, but if there's a car.
Then
parked,
how are you gonna
when
see
back out,
people?
You still can't see
Mm-hmm.
a car coming the other way.
And I think that is a great example of there's only so much we can regulate. I mean, there does come a point where it's like, how far do we want to go into the regulation process? With this form, you should still be able to see pedestrians because no one's allowed to park on a sidewalk, but you're right, with the street, there will always, I'm sure, be situations where this doesn't work out. This is more of we're trying to help the situation as much as we can, and we can certainly look into regulations on the street for driveways, but I'm not sure if I don't know. That's
So
a
that
good
you're
idea.
addressing the permanent right now.
Yeah.
There's a section in the traffic code that prohibits parking so close to a driveway, but I honestly have never seen a ticket issued for that, and so I can't tell you. I can tell you it's 25 feet from the corner, and I can tell you all of those, fire station and the fire hydrant, but a driveway, I do believe there's a code there, I just can't tell you how far away you have to park.
Mhm.
So,
Certainly, this clarifies fences, walls,
Like,
vegetation.
Yeah,
So if someone wants to
shrubs.
plant a tree, can they trim the trunk up to the
Yeah.
necessary height? Okay.
yeah, we can talk about that for a sec. So the Clearview Code kind of has this section that talks about, let's see, it's something like an exception process is needed for any vegetation that's in the way of the, within the Clearview or something. Like, it's super general, and then it talks about an exceptions process that actually isn't in place. We don't have an exception process for vegetation in the Clearview. So we are presenting some additional requirements that this is what Clearfield does. So in this Clearview area, we're saying that we're proposing to limit the vegetation to a maximum of 3 feet in height, which is that number we talked about, and then the trees be pruned to at least 7 feet above the right-of-way. So there's a good just diagram showing what that looks like. So to help the trees, a pine tree that comes all the way down, maybe that shouldn't be in your right-of-way moving forward, but maybe a Lindon tree like the ones we have out here, they would be totally fine as long as they are pruned. And again, that's to put some language into what was until recently very discretionary. Let me read that current language to you. So right now, the Clearview Code says, exceptions can be made for a reasonable number of trees and/or vegetation pruned so as to permit unobstructed vision to automobile drivers as determined by city code enforcement staff. So we don't really have that exception process established. So this would provide those exact requirements that would limit any confusion and then also help us to be able to tell people exactly what we are requiring of them.
Let's take, for example, an existing, that one that this ordinance wouldn't apply to. Do we have more than suggestive power if someone has a bush or a tree or a shrub that's blocking a road? I've had a couple calls, and I think this is a while ago, but
Yeah.
I've mentioned them, but do we have more than just, please, would you mind? Do we have discretion to say, okay, you need to cut that bush down, you need to trim that tree?
Yeah, so with this requirement, it will make it so that vegetation can only be 3 feet tall. So shrubs and stuff, but right now,
New? You said this was for new.
this is for new, yeah, you're right. But right now, if we do have those issues, like on a corner lot as we're going around a corner, I remember specifically one down on Lakeview that
Yeah.
I did a code enforcement on.
The big
It was like a big lavender bush or something.
weeds or something like that.
Yeah, something was happening. So with that, I just pulled up the I just pulled up the nuisance code and I sent them
Okay.
I actually did one of those non-traditional code enforcement notices where I just told them about the code and asked them if they could cut it down, and they cut it down within the next 3 days. So, yeah, I think people respond pretty well if it is a health and safety thing. Yep. And if we, I mean, I wouldn't think that we would get complaints on residential driveway clear view. But if we, for example, if there was a commercial property that had really big bushes right next to their driveway and people just could not see around, then maybe we could say, hey, look, please cut this down. You know, this is a health and safety issue.
Okay.
We're gonna need you to come into compliance.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me think. Okay. I did provide a few examples of what other cities do. It seems pretty varied. There's like 15-foot ones, 10-foot ones, 12-foot ones. But I already explained kind of how we decided on that 15-foot with the engineers. We believe that that is going to be the best decision for Lindon City. And then I also provided a few examples of just random houses in the city. Again, this isn't meant to, I don't even know who these people are. I just picked their houses. But it's just a good example of what that would kind of look like with a park strip. You know, it would kind of go over that sidewalk. So there's that. And then also when driveways are a bit close to each other, it would slightly overlap, but not too much. And that wouldn't mean anything special, of course. It would just mean the same. It would just have the same requirements. Same with a house that doesn't have a curb. It would just simply go off that street right-of-way line, which is usually the property line. And then there's that final example, just to kind of show what we're talking about. So yeah, in conclusion, this ordinance amendment is to help ensure that any view obstructing materials or objects will not obstruct the view from a Lindon City driveway, both in the commercial and residential areas. This ordinance amendment is meant to help staff have the tools to help owners, contractors, developers as they are developing their sites. Or adding, landscaping or something. We want to be able to enforce this best practice. So well, maybe not enforce, but we want to be able to show people this best practice and it have, the proper teeth behind it that they will follow it without the, that pushback. And yeah, the Planning Commission unanimously approved this last week on the 10th. The main comment that they had was if this is adopted, they would like staff to do a little newsletter or something with this graphic in the newsletter, a little article in the newsletter with this graphic, kind of talking about what these requirements are and then inviting people to contact staff if they feel concerned about their clear view, if they want to come into compliance with this. They had the feeling that a lot of people would want to know about this. Any questions?
So that last comment makes me think that this does pertain to existing.
It doesn't pertain to existing. It's just that they were thinking, so specifically Rob Callis, he said, if I, as a homeowner, if the city passed something like this, I would want to know what that best practice is, and I would want to know what I have to do to follow this if I wanted to. So that's what that's what he was talking about is, he wants to get that, if this is passed, he wants to get that information out there to homeowners who currently maybe have obstructions so they can make their own decisions. They can have the tools to make their own decisions. And if they don't want to do it, then that's fine.
I think this is what I heard. That was kind of the question I had is, does this, what happens if you have an existing?
Right, it was just that last comment that made me wonder and want to clarify.
Nuisance ordinance would take care of that.
Health and safety, yeah, if it's like really bad. Specifically on corner lots, I don't think we would go and enforce anything on a driveway clear view. That's, a current driveway clear view that maybe has issues. We're probably not going to go enforce that because that's more of a private property, situation. And it is a health and safety concern, but a corner lot, clear view is a wider health and safety concern. It's not just the homeowners, it's everyone using that street. And so I'm so sorry, maybe I shouldn't have brought it up. I just brought up that planning commission comment to say that they often feel like some of the things we do in meetings, the residents don't know about, and maybe they should know about.
Right.
And they don't have to follow it if they already have things that are view obscuring in their driveway clear view. But if they know about it, then, and they know the reasons behind it, then maybe that will change some hearts and they'll want to,
All right,
Get
Mr.
rid of that
Florence, do you have a
tree.
comment?
Yeah, would it be helpful, we could add a date in this ordinance that, as of October 16th, something like that in the ordinance so that it's clear when it starts to be enforced and
that's a good idea.
so.
The question I had, so how do you inform person building a house? Do they have to turn in a landscape plan?
People building new houses do have to turn in landscaping
And
plans.
would that be reviewed at that process to make any adjustments if their landscape plan was not in compliance?
Yeah, that's, so yeah, with the Waterwise landscaping plan, we have landscape plans that are meant to be coming in. And yeah, we would just make sure there's not going to be a huge pine tree right next to their driveway, right next to the sidewalk, but they could absolutely move it somewhere else on their property. Same with, new signage permits as they come in, we're gonna make sure they're not in that clear view area for commercial properties. But they're absolutely free to move it, 15 feet down from their driveway and still have it next to the sidewalk, that kind of thing. Does that answer your question?
I'm not sure, when you said we already do it for Waterwise landscaping?
So we already require landscaping plans for Waterwise landscaping for new single-family homes.
The
So we are
CUWD
already getting
contract.
landscaping plans in. We don't have to go out and ask people for them. That's already required. So when we get in a new landscaping plan, then we can look for clear view requirements. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Lucky.
Okay, I have a hypothesis. Since a few weeks ago, we talked about the addition of being able to put smaller driveways or a little less smaller driveways on some corner lots, especially up on the east side.
Okay, yeah.
If we were to take and have an existing collection mailbox, which would, if it were in the front of a house, of course, in the wrong spot, it would be obstructive. And I'm sure that you go through all of that with the post office and they place a collection box. But if there was an existing one, which could very well be on the side of a home, and then they do that, when they come in and have to get a permit for that garage, that driveway coming now another direction, like we looked at a few weeks,
Yeah.
3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, or 2 meetings ago. How would that, who's going to win on that battle? So if
Yeah, totally.
so the collection box is within that 15 feet, and the homeowner, that's all the space they have. Or do they have the ability to then ask for the collection box to be moved? Or how would the city then handle a situation similar to that?
Yeah, so I think those collection boxes, they're controlled by the post office. So in that situation, I would imagine that I would contact the post office and say, hey, we have this code. Can you move that? I don't know what their process is,
Okay.
if they would require the resident to move it, but I would assume they wouldn't, because it's not just their mailbox, it's everyone's,
Yes.
So I would,
I don't think the post office
They
pays for
don't,
that.
they don't jump
yeah,
past.
have
they
the-
don't care about that stuff.
Most of the time on a subdivision plat, there is a postal easement,
That's
that's identified. So maybe it could possibly be moved in that easement slightly, but I think we're just gonna have to do the best we can of working with the homeowner on.
That was really the only thing I thought could be a potential problem, is some of those side lots. So
Yeah,
a
totally
really
makes
well
sense.
put together presentation. Thank you, Mary.
All right, council, any further questions? All right, this is a public hearing. If we have any questions or comments, please state your name.
Lincoln Jacobs. Nice job, and that other one before, you guys
thanks.
going through and getting everything to conform with the state code and everything else. during campaign time, you get a lot of time to walk around. And so I'm seeing a lot of new houses that the foliage and stuff is nice and clean and out of the ways. Some of the older houses, right, it's really overgrown. And now with that water conservancy part where people have to submit their landscaping, I can see this being there. But 3, 4, 5, 6 years, some of those trees really get out there. And if Jacob is as lovely as you say he is, I wouldn't be against, you know, as you're going through looking at things, inviting people to conform to this in existing homes. It would be nice. Some of the stuff that I've seen out there is, you know, definitely a health, definitely a safety issue.
Yeah.
A lot of them, a little bit, not a big deal. But some
Yeah.
of those that are egregious, I say, get Jacob on it.
I would probably ask what the council thinks about that. Like enforcing maybe on egregious cases or
Well,
something.
I think what he's recommending is the non-enforcement letter, hey, and I think maybe that suggestion by the planning commission could be very wise, to just have a general communication out to the public, the reason why we're looking, this has been adopted and the date going forward, and many people, if they're aware, they'll be good stewards, I think, and then if there is overgrowth and there's maybe on a case-by-case basis, if it's obvious safety hazard, obviously, I would imagine staff would want to address it with a
Yeah.
property owner.
It's hard to generalize, but the couple of times that I've been involved with complaints and stuff like that, the homeowners have pretty much said, yeah, we'll take care of it. I mean, there may be exceptions, but I think if it was pointed out to someone where it was clearly an issue, a health issue, or a safety issue,
They're
I
usually
suspect that
pretty
they'd
good.
probably comply.
Yeah, exactly.
In one case, you had sent them a letter and they took care of it and there was no big
Yeah,
that kind of thing. Just an invitation, hey, this is instructing you.
just by the way. Maybe if we did a date then and then talked about
Not the ordinance.
ordinance. Okay.
With the letter. Yeah, I can see the letter having that.
All right. Any further public comment?
I'll make a motion then, Mayor, to close the public hearing.
All right, thank you. Motion by Councilmember Powell to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Vanchery. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are back to you, council, to review the ordinance and adopt.
I would just maybe
presented.
point out, I catch the concept of this. I just hate more regulation on petty stuff. And then we say, well, we're really not going to probably do anything about it unless it really, really gets egregious. I just,
We will do things about it with all new plans, all new improvements, that kind of thing. But, I mean, let's say if my driveway was huge bushes on either corner, I would imagine that, you know, and then a code gets adopted, I probably, well, unless it, like Lincoln was saying, unless it was really egregious and I noticed, oh, hold on, they're totally right. I can't see, you know, the kids walking past when they're coming home from school, then I probably wouldn't cut it. And we're saying that that's fine. And we're not trying to regulate the people who already have these issues. We're trying to regulate as we go forward.
yeah, I catch all that. I'm just expressing to the council my struggle with these types of things where we press a little bit further and further into, and I catch the concept of what we're doing, and on a fence, that's great. I plant a tree there, it's in violation, in 10 years it's not, because now it's grown up far enough. And if I knew, I'm happy to comply and put it to where it looks good, but I just struggle with that.
Between clarification,
And
And-
regulation, yeah.
being too in the weeds of that, I guess, right? No pun intended.
Are we ready for a motion, or do you have?
So I just have a question then for Van. So something along the lines, as long as it's to do with something hardscape, that's something that's good for all new permits? Or are you, since it's not going to grow on us? Or are you still unhappy maybe with a hardscape item fencing or big lions in front of a house.
No,
or-
we have those things for the fences and stuff now, as I understand it.
We actually don't have, the reason, so that was one of the reasons is we don't have any code language about this 15-foot clear view for fences.
Is that just for the driveway or for every place else on the lot?
Sorry, what do you mean?
So what do we
Corners,
have
what I
right now
understand.
already on fence code?
So on fence code right now, you're not allowed to have anything view obscuring or taller than 3 feet within the clear view area of a corner lot, so that 40-foot clear view.
Okay, so we have things there, and this just takes it out of the driveway view.
Uh-huh, yeah. So this would add a requirement for clear view for driveways with fences, as well as the other things we've talked about.
Fences, mailboxes, vegetation, those types of things.
Is everything heartburn, or is it mostly the vegetation? I'm curious, Van. Or is it
The
all of it?
vegetation's probably the
The biggest thing.
biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just in full disclosure, if we were trying to do this with existing, I would be no way,
Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And
there'd be a lot of headache.
just as the way the city's evolved, how people have been there forever, then a road comes in, it's already encroaching into where they thought. They have existing vegetation there now and trees that are very dear to them.
We completely agree.
Council, any other comment?
My question is then for Van, are you comfortable with taking out the vegetation, or would you just, are you pretty much a hard no? Just, I'm comfortable taking the vegetation out if we were to go that far. So that's just my discussion with the
But I need to
council.
clarify too, on existing,
Yeah.
well, again, we're talking likely versus for sure. We do have the enforcement ability on existing. But
But we're not talking existing, we're only talking
Yeah,
about.
we're only
What's up?
talking.
The heartburn is just on this ordinance, not on existing.
Well, okay, I understand that. What the concern is what then? Maybe I missed.
For me, it was, I've always had problems with legislating the landscaping along somebody's driveway. I would hope they'd be wise enough, but obviously Lincoln has firsthand seen it. I can remember myself seeing some that were a little iffy if I wanted to go down that driveway to, it's a little bit overbearing.
But wouldn't they have to comply though with the new, maybe that's what I'm not,
New construction.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, but no, I'm saying, do
New
we
construction.
want to step into the landscaping would be my question.
We do already.
Right, on another ordinance with the water wise, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, are we going to include that into the clear view, where I'm totally good with it on anything that's a hardscape item,
It
on the
was
new construction?
Interesting.
The way the ordinance is written right now is that it says the code enforcement official needs to give an exception. And we're trying to take that exception out, just because I don't want to have to look at every single, give an exception every time. If I give one, do I gotta give 100 then? I'm just trying to take that discretion out of there and give people some standards on saying, okay, your grasses are cut to, ornamental grasses are cut to 3 feet or less, so your trees are raised up to 7 feet. I mean, if you want us to keep the language in there that, like it says on the 40-foot triangle one, that, this exceptions can be made for reasonable number of trees and or other vegetation pruned as to not permit unobstructed vision. Automobile drivers as determined by the city code enforcement staff. So,
I so don't want to create more work for you, Michael, but I also don't want Jacob to run around with a tape measure going, okay, your ornamental grass is too high, oh, you haven't pruned up your tree high enough. So somebody's got to have some work in there, I guess, so. And in there is our property rights. So,
I have a quick question. So you mentioned 15 feet was what was discussed by the Planning Commission and recommended here tonight. But it sounded like there were some other footages that were at times adopted by other communities.
Yes.
Is that anything council wants to look at in this, as far as making it a more minimal corner on the driveway specifically, not the corners of the road right away, but the driveway, that they can start to do more with their property, maybe within closer than 15 feet?
The reason why we decided on 15 feet just was because of the length of the biggest Sprinter van is going to be able to see someone walking on a sidewalk, but and that's so that's where that 15-foot came from. Of course, not everyone has a 22-foot Sprinter van. We just suggested that as, I mean, like the worst possible scenario kind of thing, you know? And of course, we can talk about maybe go back and look at other clear view triangles, or look at other, and what that would look like with a Sprinter van, with a Suburban. Those were just the longest residential vehicles that Noah pulled. But
All
yeah,
right.
we're
It may
free
not
to
be, it may not be a necessary discussion,
look at that.
but
No, not for me at all. And for me, if my Sprinter van's parked there and I'm backing out, I just lost my clear view anyway. If my neighbor's vehicle's there, I've lost my clear view anywhere. I'm just gonna push back on too much regulation.
you're going to hope for that you have your Sprinter van has nice rear view cameras and alerts, right?
Well, no, that's if you're in it, but if you're now backing out with your other car,
Oh, I
Your
got you.
Sprinter
My,
van
is,
is
is,
blocking
it
the
is,
view.
oh, gotcha.
well, on my way to city council tonight, I was backing up and my neighbor's 2-year-old was on his little, hot rod, his little foot bike
Yeah.
right next to my driveway. So I am grateful I could see him out there and I didn't have something obstructing.
Mm-hmm.
Any more comments? Ready to make a motion? I move that we approve, I thought we did.
We did.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Magleby got it.
Okay, I move that we approve ordinance number 2023-21-0, amending the clear view code to add requirements for driveway clear view areas as presented.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Vanchery. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, with second by Councilmember McAlby. Any further discussion on this motion? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
nay.
All right. I feel like this has been vetted by staff and was unanimously discussed by the Planning Commission and recommended to our body here tonight, with it being a safety and health and safety issue, and with the accommodation for the grandfathering in of existing residents. I think I will vote in favor. And so the motion carries.
Just for the record, that's because there was a tie.
Of a tie, correct.
You're able to vote, Mayor.
Breaking the tie. All right. Okay, that concludes item number 9. We'll move forward now to item number 10. This is also a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open a public meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Magleby, seconded by Councilmember Broderick. All in favor to open the public hearing for agenda item number 10.
Aye.
Okay, we are now in a public hearing. Mr. Florence will be presenting. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor and council members. A couple years ago, I brought to you just some discussion items about short-term rentals. That was back in 2020. I had been receiving some complaints at that time. I think some of you had as well. After that, it kind of dropped off. I didn't receive many complaints, so I didn't move this ordinance forward. And then recently, about 3 months ago, I received I think, Mary, I think you were copied on it. I think Adam was copied on as well, from a neighbor that was very upset about a short-term rental on a cul-de-sac where they lived, and the cul-de-sac had filled up full of cars. The person was allowing RVs to come in and take up the driveway. And so I thought, okay, it's probably time that we address this. I looked on the Airbnb website, and I think have about 19 short-term rentals at this point. And so you asked me back in 2020 to bring an ordinance that was some general requirements. There's some city ordinances that are very specific, and so this one's a little bit more general than most that I've reviewed. So just as a summary to go through the ordinance, so a home could only be rented to one party of guests at a time, and so that someone couldn't rent to multiple parties and divide up their home, for example. This is something, the next bullet point is something we had a lot of discussion about at the planning commission level as to how many to allow in the city. Do we allow only so many on a street, like some communities? And what we came to was to only allow one per cul-de-sac. That way, you're not overfilling the cul-de-sac if you had multiple. The ordinance for parking would require a minimum of 2 parking stalls, and then for every for guests over 6, you'd need 1 additional parking stall for every 4 people. So let's say so you could allow up to 6 individuals, need 2 parking stalls, and these are for overnight guests. If you added 4 additional guests, so you had 10 coming, you'd need 3 parking stalls. So an owner, as they rent their property, they need to look at how many they're going to allow there to rent their property as a short-term rental. And that'll determine the number of parking spaces they need to have off the street. They have to designate a responsible individual that could respond to the property within 1 hour. So if they get a complaint from the police department about a party or something like that, they've got to have a responsible person to arrive on site within an hour. They've got to install a nameplate on the front by the door that gives the contact information for the responsible party. They have to have a packet indoors with the rules and requirements for such as parking or outdoor time frame for activities outside the home. Short-term rentals cannot be used for events. They need to have proper egress, smoke, and carbon monoxide detectors. For outdoor activities, the time limit, so, if they're having an outdoor pool party, it needs to end at 10 p.m. They can start at 7 a.m. And then the last bullet point, property owner shall be responsible for ensuring that guests or occupants do not create a nuisance as found in our Lindon City Nuisance Code. So that's a brief overview. I'd be glad to answer any additional questions. The Planning Commission did recommend a positive recommendation for this ordinance. So the other item I forgot also, they would be required to have a business license. When we update we're currently updating our business license fees. We're doing a fee study right now. So when that study comes to you for adoption and we update the fees, then we would implement that business license fee at that time. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I have a question on the tax that goes to the state.
Mm-hmm.
How is that regulated? How do we know that they're sending tax in and doing that? Do we have a way to regulate that?
So when they get their business license, we're going to ask for proof of that. So typically, they just collect that through, Airbnb or VRBO, something like that. But
And the state has been sending the city tax. We get a report of, it just says Airbnb dollar amount.
Okay.
And those numbers that we've collected for the last 4 or 5 years are noted in your staff report so it is increasing every year. So I think as the temple comes on board, I think you're also gonna see more interest in that for weddings and things like that.
So these 19 that are registered with Airbnb and VRBO, do they have a license with the city?
They do not, because we currently
Okay.
don't regulate short-term rentals.
But we'd reach out to them if we did that.
We would, yep.
Again, would they be grandfathered?
They would not for licensing.
Licensing, okay,
yeah,
well, that makes
so
sense.
Yeah, that's not a zoning thing, that would be, now let's say we have two on a cul-de-sac, then they probably would be grandfathered, and we would but we would require a business license.
Great presentation, Mike. I love the page that has all the kind of what-ifs and how do we do some of these things. One of the things, I'm grateful for the fact that we are forward on this, that we're allowing it, but I'd also like to see from the very beginning, since these things came out a dozen years ago, I think we need to do some sort of regulating on these to some degree, and I see that some cities only allow so many within that, and there's a waiting list on one particular city. Is that something that we might be willing to look at, whether we have them per zone, so many per zone, or, kind of like we do our R2 overlay, or
Yeah,
something?
Sandy City does that.
Right.
Where they have like 30 different districts, you can allow one so many per district, and you're on a waiting list until then.
Because I would hate to see the majority of them end up on the east side, closer to where the temple is, or, and maybe just not, I'd like to see we spread I don't want to see the burden, but the impact throughout the city possibly. So that would be one of the things that I would love to see, whether it's in this ordinance or in ones coming down the pike. Let's see. I also liked the fact that some cities have a requirement of there be some sort of owner occupancy, whether part-time or, I'd just love to hear the council's opinion. I actually peeked in listened to a little bit of the YouTube on this. I didn't hear too much of the commission talk about that, although I really appreciated their discussion, and it was a hearty discussion. But I didn't hear too much of whether that needed to be owner occupied. I know there's one on Center Street that is completely without an owner inside of it, and it has caused a little bit of problems for my neighbor. They're very great to deal with it, but it's the floodlights are on all night and come into the dwelling that's to the east of it, and that is something that has not been addressed. How do we, maintain not just that regular nuisance, but that type of they pop those on and go inside and have their whatevers, but they don't even think to turn it off. And so I like the idea of making sure there's always a person that's responsible within an hour. And I think, I'm not sure if this is in the ordinance, I can't recall if it's in the ordinance or it was suggested that the neighbors around it be given, you'll have to remind me, given the contact information for that responsible 1 hour person. Along with that, though, what is the repercussion to the business or the owners if that person is not available within an hour? So how do we address that? Is there a fine? Is there, do we send them to the naughty corner? How do we be able to handle that? Because I think that's a huge part of making these successful within our neighborhoods, is having a response person available within that 1 hour.
Yeah. To answer your question, I should have said this in the presentation, but this was Commissioner Showers owns quite a few short-term rentals, and so he had a lot of good input on this. One of the things he recommended was this number 5, that, number 6, when a business license is issued, the city shall mail to each abutting property owner of the short-term rental the name and contact information of the property owner or responsible party of the short-term rental, so they can know who to contact. So we did include that from the presentation. We did not discuss owner occupancy at the Planning Commission. And then as far as enforcement, the business license is going to be a strong, hopefully deterrent that, the city can use that as a way to, try and enforce some of these if we do have issues. And so we can threaten to suspend or, revoke a business license if it does get too bad. But that would be one of the things. We also still have our nuisance code. If there's something applicable that a nuisance is happening, we can use that as well.
And I appreciate all that. I do think any of us that have stayed in an Airbnb, I mean, it's, that most of them, I've never been in one that doesn't have the quiet hour,
Yeah.
quiet time frame that you've all got to settle down and you make sure all your guests that are with you that are, okay, no outside loud partying or whatever. But the parties, they move along, sometimes before the nuisance citation can be offered. So the occupants are not going to be helpful oftentimes. And so I guess that's why I feel like that 1 hour responsible party is extremely important for this to be something that's good for our Lindon residents, especially in the residential areas that people did not expect this when they built their homes how many years ago. So,
Yeah.
so I do, to me, that's the number one. And if we can make that the one that's teeth, so that somebody knows that they've got to respond if they've got bad tenants, that they're going to come over and wrap some knuckles.
Yeah.
Mayor, I have a comment.
Yes, please.
I vacillate between property owners' rights and regulation. I think in the case of the Clearview, that was a safety issue that I felt comfortable with. In this case, I don't know that I would feel more comfortable not just saying so many in a certain area. I mean, I think the market would maybe take care of that. I don't know for sure. But I think as long as we have the regulations in place and if we make sure they're being enforced, I feel like property owners should have the right to, if they abide by the ordinance, I feel like they should have the
So
right.
you're okay with 2 in a cul-de-sac?
Well,
Curious.
no, you didn't let me finish.
Oh, no, that was just a question.
I think the one in the cul-de-sac is I live in a cul-de-sac. I don't know that I would sue anybody, but, it is kind of tough in a cul-de-sac, I agree, especially if there's motorhomes. Occasionally, we do get that, just with people. I could probably go with that one, but I mean, in terms of just saying you can only have so many in this zone and so many in that zone, I think it unduly discriminates against those who can legally do something, but us just saying we don't want you to because we don't like it, to me, that's a different issue than saying it's a health and safety issue.
So if in a cul-de-sac, if 2 of them are operating there and they're all completely parked off the street,
Then
how
we'd
do
have-
you say this person, just because he asked first, gets to do it, and the neighbor now is doing it to try to increase revenue, to make their mortgage payment, to stay there?
Well, then I think that's where enforcement would have to come in. I think you'd have to have the police or whoever go and say, yeah. I mean, I see that we could handle it within the ordinance itself, with the enforcement options and so forth. Maybe am I missing something?
It does bring up the interesting point of, is this operating a business? Should it be, regulated as a business within the city? And it appears, I know Orem City, Adam shared an article, Orem City has this very problem they're discussing right now where these are impacting neighborhoods and communities, and neighbors are very unhappy with them. And so I think we're taking, I like that we've had the approach of not being heavy-handed and trying to regulate these too early on, kind of let them organically, and I think the majority of them are being operated very responsibly by people, but maybe having some safeguards where instead of the police are called, there's a contact person. I think that's a brilliant thing.
No, I'm not suggesting we go right to the police. I'm just saying that we can handle it
Right.
with the enforcement opportunities in the code.
I think some things being suggested here could be useful, though, so that there is a responsible party that can be contacted
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
moment that something's a problem.
To the extent that we've stayed in
yeah.
Airbnbs, it's been perfect in the sense that you walk in the door, there's things on the wall that tell you the
Right.
owner's name, email, contact information, have their business license, they have their rules. that you can look at. You know, the other thing too that occurred to me is with the prohibition against, well, with the requirement to have a certain amount of parking, off-street parking, based on the number of people, that one factor alone may be a winnowing process.
And that's something, originally, when I wrote this, most cities have a cap of how many people you can have in there, and the planning commission had some real heartburn about that, and so they tried to base the occupancy off parking to have parking help regulate the number of people.
And when someone came in for a business license or to explore the code, again, that if they don't have any other off-street parking, that would probably be the answer right there. You can't do it.
That's correct, because they need to provide us as part of the application, they need to provide us a site plan that shows us where that designated parking is located.
Yeah, so hopefully we can avert the on-street parking.
I agree with that. I mean, the on-street parking is the part you're going to be able to observe if they're in accordance, versus, are you gonna count the people by weight, or how many little ones, how many little ones you're gonna have in there? I mean, are we gonna stack them up and say 3 little ones make a whole person? I mean, how you can throw little ones on the, your pack and plays and those kind of things. And that's what I liked about the how you aggregated that, so I appreciate that part.
Are you finished?
Oh, I'm just going to say, as I look at other municipalities, some don't even allow that. So I feel like we are very good at being open to it. Would like us to maybe consider the possibilities of doing it by a zone or a cap of some kind. Not to say that we have a problem with it yet. I'm grateful that we have watched this for 10, 12 years now, but I do think it's something that we should be a little bit more careful with, not to be too welcoming of too many of those. Because if we go back to the cul-de-sac theory, that if the neighbor next door gets to have it, I might not want to live there anymore. I might want to just rent my home out. So yes, I would like to be able to have a quality of life no matter where it is or who it is that's there. And I do believe that property owners should be able to do what it is they would like to do, given the scope of if they're within the ordinances. But this is something I do think that we're able to legislate, and I do think we've got to take all of our citizens into consideration. And perhaps they would only like it if we only had so many. That's just a hypothesis of mine.
Thank you, Councilmember Powell. I have a question for the council. In my mind, there may be perhaps, and I'd like to ask you your thoughts, a difference between a fully non-owner occupied Airbnb versus an owner occupied.
It's a huge difference to me.
So I know Orem is right now discussing should they require owner occupied or not. That's not on the table here tonight. But in regards to a cap or so many in a cul-de-sac, do we want to delineate any additional allowances if it is owner occupied versus non? Do we want to separate the two?
Well, I'm a short-term rental owner of a property in Washington, and the fire marshal controls a lot of what I can do with occupancy, how many can be there. Has to be annually inspected. There's a lot of things that take place down there. And, a number of years ago, St. George just didn't allow short-term rentals, and so hotels were popping up everywhere, and now it's too many.
They've capped them.
They've capped them, but what it's done is those that are approved short-term rental areas of various cities down there, it's caused those properties to be worth a lot more money because they have a profit center now, and then they can justify selling their home for more than what the next door neighbor has that's not doing a short-term rental. So that may cause some grief for someone in a cul-de-sac saying, my neighbor's got this short-term rental property, he's gonna sell it for $200,000 more than what my home's worth because he's got a short-term rental. So then what eventually will take place is everybody will wanna do it so they can have a valuation of their home.
I think you're bringing up a really good point. There's a lot of communities that are high tourism areas that are finding a shortage for people in the area to live, that need to live there to, in the community, to be the workers in the community and the affordability. And so it is very interesting point you bring up.
So is this ordinance for owner occupied, or is it for a home can be completely
Anything.
a short-term rental property?
So a home could be.
Both
Then
right now.
our fire marshal will need to know of those properties, and they will have to regulate that, is my understanding.
And Hurricane City was the only one I could find that has the fire marshal. They allow a certain number, and then you can go above that number with the fire marshal approval. The building code does give an occupancy for construction of, one person per 200 square feet. But that could be a lot of people that you could fit into a home if you use the construction code requirement. As far as the fire marshal, I'm not sure how he comes up with the number, because I asked our fire inspector and he didn't know what
Based on square footage is my understanding, and my property is in Washington City, and they have a lot of short-term rental.
Yeah.
And it's my agency that manages my property, they have to have an annual inspection. Even under my staircase, I can't have anything in there. I mean, there's a lot of regulations. There has to be fire extinguishers throughout the home, just like if it was a hotel.
The
you were
cities
going
down
to.
there also, I believe, Daryl, correct me if I'm wrong, they collect an annual fee.
Yes, that is
You have to
correct.
pay an annual fee,
Yeah.
even
I have
for
to pay
long-term.
property tax on my belongings there.
For that fact that the fire marshal goes in and does all this stuff.
I have to submit a report every year to Washington for if I've purchased another couch or a vacuum, or there's a lot of regulations in place.
They have a renewal of the license and.
And we would require that renewal annually as well on that business license.
And just for the record, Mr. Florence, being from Louisiana, it's hurricane.
Hurricane.
Just so you know.
Just like Tooele.
Thule.
Council,
Do we have any unoccupied homes being used solely for this?
On Center Street, the one I was referring to, does not have an occupant.
The
They don't even
two
live
that
in the
I
area.
have dealt with enforcement, neither of them were owner occupied. Both owners lived out of state. So,
I believe there's one that's not owner occupied, but the owner does live in the city. So they're close. that I'm
I mean, I
aware of.
like the idea of investment, but then it starts to become an investment area and you start losing that feel of community and,
We're not a destination community as St. George and Washington County, so it's a little different, and I don't see it being as explosive as it is down there, but.
Well, we're becoming a wedding capital, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
I think 3 years ago when I brought you some talking points about this, I think we had 7 or 8 at that time. So we've doubled in 3 years, but I don't know what the max we'll ever get. So
Well, like mentioned before, we've taken a measured approach. We're not trying to overreact. We're trying to allow, those that are operating responsibly to, have some breathing room there. But what things are pertinent here that this is a public meeting, so I will invite anyone here from the public to also comment or ask questions.
I'll make a motion if
All
you'd
right.
like, Mayor.
Thank you.
Make
Please
a
do.
motion to close the public hearing.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Powell to close the public hearing, seconded by Councilmember Broderick. All in favor?
Aye.
Council, back to you for further discussion. Or if anyone's ready to make a motion. You can see in red what is the proposed adopted language that is being added to the previous language.
Can I pose the question as, would anybody be interested in adding a little bit more, whatever language, to those that are not owner occupied? A little bit more, whether it's a $20 bigger fee so that maybe the fire marshal has to come in. I'm just making this up from, shooting from the hip on this one, but something that would make it a little bit more regulatory, just because somebody's not on site.
Can we do that, Brian? Can we discriminate in the fees for,
Yeah, absolutely. They're different classes. You have to treat the class the same, but you're talking about distinguishing between owner-occupied and.
Right. Yeah.
You can distinguish.
Or
Just
what
a-
if the owner resides within the city?
To me, it's still unoccupied if they
Right.
reside in the city.
Yeah,
That gets a little more tricky.
What-
I've seen a number of cities that say, you know, it has to be owner occupied for
so many
6
days.
months out of the year or 180 days or some,
Well, that's how
think-
Washington County does their property tax, is if you live there for so many months of the year, then you don't get the increased amount of property tax, which is substantial. It's
You only
50
get
to-
one primary residence. so
Right.
You
Yeah.
pick one, and
so
they like to tell you, you get the discount on your primary one. Terminology that they use.
I like Councilman Powell's idea. I'm willing to go that far. I don't know that I'm willing to go as far as saying no owner, only owner occupied, no unowner occupied.
No, I just
But
think
I'll let
a
the-
little bit of additional oversight, because I
Agreed.
think our resources as a city would be, whether it's the police department have to come knock on a door perhaps more often, just perhaps. Staff has to write maybe another letter or two versus somebody that's in the home, you know, on another level.
Yeah, I like that. I like that this is a great first step, and I would suggest we address at some point, maybe with some suggestions on non-owner occupied things that might be
I see this
prudent.
evolving. I think now we're heading off at the past, but things change, and it's very possible that some people, maybe even in this audience, might have the opportunity to revisit.
Right, and I think if it's an annual or every other year, kind of a revision, just to take a peek at it.
All right, so looking at what is proposed here tonight, do you feel comfortable to make a motion to adopt or change, or do you want to continue and direct staff to add some further research or language to this?
I don't know how much more needs to be unless Mike thinks that we need to let you devise a subcategory that would be put into this, or an additional, I don't know how the language would be, and then the council would need to come up with, you know, another dollar amount or recommendation from you. What would you prefer?
I think the dollar amount will come up when the business license fee study is completed.
So we could just delineate to the fact that it would be a different fee, a different level. Is that what you're
Yeah, I'd
saying?
probably want something in the ordinance that may delineate, so I'd probably want to bring this back to you in 2 weeks
Okay.
with
So we talk
with
about
some
the
language.
fire marshal scenario as well. We don't want someone renting a place not knowing what happens when they've built a fire, they don't know how to put it out. The whole neighborhood goes up in flames because of a renter.
And with that, I'd want to discuss that more with Adam, because we're now asking our fire marshal to do more where we contract those services. And
Contract
so
with their services, yeah.
I want to make sure
Okay,
our contract is,
Well,
continue this.
it's a business, and a business anywhere in the city has to follow those guidelines as a fire marshal, so they would have to be involved in it.
that's a good point.
Point's well taken, though. I mean, you need to determine whether or not they have the capacity or the workload or the desire to do it.
Yeah.
Hence why it'd be would you, well, Daryl, would you consider, I mean, would you think it needs to be
I'd continue it.
for all of the residents to have the fire marshal involved, or just the ones that are non-owner occupied? Just curious with your experience.
I don't know what there's probably a state mandate that we could look into regarding that.
We may need to call Washington City, so.
Yeah.
It sounds, from your explanation, sounds to me like they're treating their short-term rentals as commercial hotel or motels.
Correct.
And so that's why you're being taxed for that.
Property
personal
tax, all of that,
property and
yes.
all of that. So that's a big step from probably where this ordinance is, but we can
True.
look into some of those fire code issues.
I think in 2 weeks we can revisit it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, sounds like we have direction to staff to look at the owner-occupied versus non-owner-occupied status and fee structure, as well as the inspections potentially and fire marshal safety inspections. Okay. Anything else, council?
No.
All right, if not, I would entertain a motion to continue this item.
Also move.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Magalby, seconded by Councilmember Powell. All in favor, too.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. So we'll see that one back again in a couple weeks. All right, we have item number 11 now. This is also a review and action regarding a grant agreement with the Utah County Health Department.
Jamie Jensen is our Communities That Care coordinator and had applied earlier this year. It's been several months back for an agreement with Utah County through the Health Department. And this is providing some additional funding for tobacco and substance abuse with tobacco products. And so she's put together this application. The county commissioners have reviewed this and approved this contract, and so this would be taking it to you as the insurance and license holder on this grant. This provides some additional funding. She has outlined some of the programs. She'll be going into the schools, working with them through some classes that would be taught. Some workshops. Also, there's some money that she's earmarked for some additional help. It would be temporary, part-time, only for the duration of this grant, which runs through June 30th of 2024. And so this funding expires after that. Any questions on this?
You answered my question right off the bat with the assistant coordinator, and how long was that position going to be? And
Yeah, she had a couple different part-time positions there that had been requested, but those are temporary only based on the grant funding, so.
We don't need a public hearing for this.
Nope. Anything else, Alan?
Ready for a motion?
I don't know that we need to say
If you have any
anything
further
else.
questions, Alan is here. He can answer some questions about it if you have any.
Anything you want to tell us, Alan?
I would say the grant, what she has listed, is flexible, and it's not, we don't necessarily need to spend it all. And so, she's put a wide variety of things in there, and it can all be adjusted. And she texted me and said she's not planning on spending it all anyway, although she can. And so, the grant has just been given for a lot. We'll try and use the grant to the best of its ability, but there's no penalty against us if we don't, so.
I will say this, I want to go on record as saying Jamie and you guys are fantastic. I mean, above and beyond anything I dreamed of when they first presented it to us. I knew they'd do a good job, but to see how active they are and how many things that they're doing, you probably discussed this in my absence last week, but the suicide prevention dinner or seminar or whatever it was, that was, man, they're just doing a great job. I think we made a good decision.
Jamie's fantastic. I'll second that.
All right, council. Any further questions regarding this? This would be an agreement to accept the funds. My understanding is there will be volunteers also. She's training different volunteers also in these activities. So she has been also advised to make sure she has a good team to deploy the grant, and anyone hired would be just for the purposes of the grant, to administer it, so that she can also meet her other responsibilities as a city employee.
Yeah, she's very stretched on her time as it is, and so we've met with Jamie, just as far as supervisors and staff, and I think it's clear that
This is necessary.
there's limitations on her time. She's aware of that. We've indicated that acceptance of this grant doesn't change the amount of hours that she's approved for, and so we're trying to rein in her enthusiasm a little bit. And again, she does a great job, as has been said, and so.
And I would like to share, I've popped into some of the classes that are taught, the teenage coping skills, and some of you have also experienced. The response in the community has been really positive. There's been a really good, I would say, take rate, if we're talking, of people really benefiting from these programs and what's happening. And ultimately, prevention with our youth, helping families have stronger relationships and better parenting. And this is all helps the community in a lot of ways that are hard to quantify necessarily an exact bottom line, but they do make us a stronger, thriving community, in my opinion. So as long as we can administer it smart and judiciously, as staff says that they'll work as a team with her, so.
She just does a fabulous job.
She's a
Willing to
go-getter.
make a motion when you're ready.
So this is my question, and it comes from before. I love the program, love what it's doing, love the tools. I'm always trying to look at what does this do, and this is maybe a question for Brian. Are we doing it in such a way that the city does not become liable for counsel or direction from people that aren't, this will come out, that don't have the certifications and education that allows them maybe to do that? Are we doing things to make sure that we're keeping the city safe from litigation?
I haven't gone through the details on this contract as it relates to that specific question, but in talking with Heath and Alan, as we've been working our programs, we look very closely at that, and so I'm confident that that will continue with this program too, because we're always worried about who we're putting in charge of these classes, what experiences they have, and what potential exposure there is to the city. So Heath and Alan do a great job with that.
Not just the city, but from other people that may get
Exactly.
not great advice or not great direction, and it leads to a tragedy. That's.
Well, do we have disclaimers when people sign up for these things?
I
Do we
don't
have
think
disclaimers in
I
them?
don't know that we
Yeah,
have
I don't think so.
specifically for this type of class, but
I mean, we were required to have our own insurance coverage, and there's an indemnification of the county, and so they're saying, we're giving you this money and you're in charge of it, and we're wiping our hands clean of this, and so.
That's part of what makes me think about that too. There's a reason why they take those steps as well.
I would say that the classes that she's putting together most of them do have a disclaimer, and that the people teaching the classes are either certified, as in they have a degree to teach these classes, or this grant puts them through certification courses to become certified to teach the classes. So it's not Jamie or a volunteer going out and teaching a random class, but they have to be put through the class first and get the certification before they can teach it, if that helps at all.
It does, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, council, any further discussion? If not, are we ready for a motion?
I'll be happy to make a motion if we're ready. I almost said Your Honor.
I'm not,
That works
it's
too,
above
right?
my pay grade.
Your Grace.
There you go. Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that, so,
President,
okay, yes. That's a big one.
you're future president.
Oh, well.
She
that's
President-elect
another
Powell.
That's another organization.
Yes.
Okay, so I will move to approve the Utah County Health Department grant agreement as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Powell, seconded by Councilmember Malgalby. Any further discussion? All right, we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, very good. All right, thank you, council. We're moving along here. We have a full agenda, but we're moving along great. So we are now on to item number 12. This is a public hearing for some budget amendments. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing as our finance director approaches.
We talked a little bit.
Welcome,
Motion.
Kristen. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Malgalby to open a public hearing.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Broderick. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good. We are now in a public hearing. We'll turn this over to staff to present.
It
Thank
says
you.
30 minutes, you got 15.
Right on. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so there is a lot here, but I'm just going to go over some of the bigger items. So note number 2 is regarding the police vehicle lease. It was in last year's budget, and this is carrying forward. It is a little bit more than we had anticipated, but we have the financial means for it, and believe we're also adding another vehicle to it. So we have the lease, the funds from the financing sources for the lease revenue, and then it pays for the vehicles, and then we make the payment on the lease. And so that's what all of those numbers are for. And then there's the also purchase of equipment that's also moving forward, and that's the light bars and the cage and what holds the laptop. So
Just for clarification, when you're saying moving forward, just explain what that means really quick, so.
From last fiscal year to this fiscal year?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. So like I said, it was budgeted in last fiscal year. It wasn't spent or received, and then we have it in this fiscal year now. So a lot of these budget amendments are for things carrying forward from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. In note 3, insurance in many departments increased, and that's a total increase of $16,470. And I'm going to jump forward to number 12. If anyone has any questions that I'm skipping, please let me know. Or we don't have to go in order. We can skip around if you have questions. On number 12, we'll discuss it more in the RDA, but I just wanted to point out that the general fund will be transferring $500,000 to the redevelopment fund. In number 14, the purchase of equipment in the aquatic center. This is using park tax to replace concession equipment in order to increase concession options and sales. On note number 15, using park tax to reconstruct the base in the Meadow Park playground and then replace that playground equipment. And this was in last year's budget for $150,000. The bid came in and it's $344,000. So it is double, yeah. So it's not just.
Is the difference between the 344 and the 150?
Pardon?
The increase is really the difference between the 344 and the 150 that we've already budgeted.
Right. Well, I have to put the whole thing in this year's budget. We had the 150 in last year's budget. It was never spent. It went into fund balance. So we're going to use that there. So lots of other, like in number 16, lots of other park projects that are carrying forward. There's a few new costs for Anderson Farms pickleball court lighting, $33,400, and then the acoustic block at Pheasant Brook Park pickleball courts of $18,000. In number 18, the wells, we're actually decreasing the budget $500,000. One said that with the increased costs on some of the other projects, we'll decrease that and do it more in phases. And then with 19, the secondary water special projects, that's carrying forward an amount and then also increasing it because of increased costs. And this is for the Provo River Aqueduct connection. And then in the culinary water projects, the generators were budgeted last fiscal year, and that's moving forward to this fiscal year. In number 21 refers to the grant that we just spoke about in the last item, as well as a setting up a line item for community, in the community center department for Lindon Cares. And so having that grant spent out of there, as well as the other communities that cares grant money that we're receiving, have that spent out of there as well. And then, so that's the budget amendment, and then there's some more things that are coming up that we don't have in the amendment. We don't have exact numbers, but we know that they're coming, and just wanted to bring those things to your attention. The Lindon Arena Phase 2 improvements, that's terrace seating in the retention wall blocks, park benches, new bathrooms, additional grading, just an estimated cost of $286,900. That just like an engineer's estimate kind of a thing, not based on bids or anything. And then the Mirtha pool lining, all of the pools have leaks and need to have the lining replaced, and it's no longer under warranty. And so they originally said it would be about $800,000 to do all of that. They're talking to the vendor to get pricing on doing it over 3 years to do different pools in the schedule, the estimated schedules there. So we don't have any pricing back on that yet.
Is there an offset that would happen with without the loss of the water that we have to fill? You know, what
As
the
in
line,
dollars of how much we would be saving in water loss?
something, just a guesstimate on that?
I don't know that offhand. In reality, water is really cheap. I mean, to be honest. And so you can have tens of thousands of gallons and it's maybe a few $100s. I mean, it's not going to be.
I didn't know to the extent that the leaks were.
What's that? Yeah, and so it would not come close to offsetting an $800,000 purchase.
No, of course I didn't think that, but I was just wondering what the volume is of the loss. so.
Volume, Alan.
We
that was a
are
good idea.
calculating that the activity pool is losing $13,500 gallons in 24 hours. So it's
1,300?
dropping an inch and a half of water in
13,000.
24 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we anticipate?
Where's it
this,
going?
Do we know
Yeah,
that
nice
this
big
would have to
sinkhole
do
coming
this?
in.
Yeah, somebody was told at some point. So,
In other words, whoever
So-
was told didn't tell somebody else.
yeah, and Alan, you jump in here whenever you need to here. So
Yeah.
anything else that you wanted to go over? Because I have a few other things, so. Okay, hang tight, Kristen. So I want to show you just a few photos of what's going on at the pool. We included a couple in your packet, but so one of the items that's happening, this is kind of that zero entry area by the wrecked pirate ship, is just to the right there, and you can see the seams for the underlayment underneath the lining have separated, and it makes these little 1/4 inch or so dips that there's been some concern about, and then over time, some of those, you can see them down in this area, are along actual seams in the liner, and as that liner has aged, it is stretched and created holes in that. So this would be an example of one that Alan took some photos of, where there's these little pinholes that get discovered, and they can be filled, but then again, it continues to stretch along those membrane seams. Where it's particularly challenging is around some of the
Inlets or
inlets.
pipes, yeah, whatever you want to call them.
where you can see that the liner flexes and stretches and creates problems around some of these types of things in the pool. Another thing that's going on with the liner on the sidewall, you can see where some of those darker colors are, which is rust that is actually coming through the membrane from the stainless steel liner on the other side.
Yeah.
So even though it's stainless, it's still creating some sort of reaction and rusting through in numerous spots throughout the pool. So those are indicators that water is going out in that spot. And so we have a lot of those throughout the pool. These little vertical patches are literally just that. They are patches along prior seams in the membrane, but you can see where some of those rust spots have come through. And so as great as our pool condition is, it has a lot of maintenance challenges. And so you can see again here on some of those seams over time that it's just failing. So we're at about 15 years was the warranty, or sorry, it was the expected life, what we were told by the pool installers. That was the expected life on the membrane. And we are past that.
How long was that? Again?
15 years. So they said, we estimate this liner will last 15 years. So that's where apparently somebody was told that.
So is this replacing
This is replacing
the whole thing?
entire thing for
And maybe
800.
do it in phases.
We ask that they come back with, sharpen their pencil and come back with this in 3 phases. And if we can, part of the dilemma and what we don't want to have happen is that we have a major leak during an operating season where we would have to shut down and lose revenue. And so what we've asked is for them to break out the lazy river and some of the other small kiddie pools, the zero entry area by the shipwreck, and then the lap pool. Break out those 3 areas, and they have to have a certain temperature for them to actually go in and do this. And so there's a small window of opportunity before or after a season that they could actually come in and do this without potentially impacting our revenue when we're open.
Do we anticipate anything below the liner will need work, or is that a pull off and see?
It would be there underneath the liner, so there's the ground, the dirt and everything, and then there's a stainless steel box, I guess you could say, that's braced, that the liner goes up against. But on the bottom where you stand is, they call it a spaghetti mesh, and that's what is starting to shrink and pull apart and causing these divots. And there has been complaints of people kind of twisting their feet as they walk along the lazy river as they hit these divots. And especially in adults that are taller than 3 feet, they're not floating along. So that would need to be replaced, but that's included on this 800,000. So the anticipation of anything past what is in this is absolute minimal. That stainless steel box it's just a box, and what we're replacing is what sits on top of the box.
So it's not just the liner, it's anything that is between the liner and the
It
box.
would go from the tile on the edge all the way down to the bottom with the mesh, and then up the sidewall as well. So we're not replacing pipes, we're not replacing tile, but it is everything. We're not replacing the metal stuff or the sumps where the pipes are on the bottom, but it's all that mesh.
And it will be replaced, not just spot plate replaced underneath there.
Yeah, I guess what is included is that the stairs are getting covered with this with the Murtha lining, this PVC lining, instead of, because these stairs are cracking and tile is popping off a lot as it gets used and through the seasons. And so instead we're thinking about, well, it's included in this estimate to line those with the Murtha lining, so that way we take out this tile that's popping, we get rid of that.
So what does this do to our general fund balance? Do we decrease it by whatever the next year's increment is? Roughly 300,000 a year. I mean,
Yeah.
Assuming that there's going to be more than the 800,000, there always is. So it'd be about 300,000 a year that would be taken out of our reserves.
Yes. So- And right now, we have a one-time transfer to the RDA of $500,000. That won't be in future years. There will be debt service. I'm not sure how much it will be. We'll make up the difference. But I'm just trying to think, because right now we have a lot of transfers that we're doing. So we have some give and take.
So again, these dollars are not in this
Right, it's not.
budget amendment tonight, but this is a huge dollar amount that we wanted to give you a heads up is coming, and over the next couple of months, we'll have finalized numbers from the contractor with a schedule of when they think they can do this over the next couple of seasons.
Alan, I have a question for you. Were the nightly rentals full this last season?
Every night was filled. We opened up a Thursday night. We just did Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Instead, we opened up Thursday. We've increased the price twice over the past couple of years. It was $500 an hour. We're up to $800 an hour, and every night is filled. Every single night. And I think if we opened up Monday nights and took away the late night, that would get filled as well. Every Monday night.
But then some residents want an evening swim opportunity, right?
Oh, yeah.
It just helps on the
I'll come up.
So is that something maybe next year budget discussions, you know, if your opinion, if we're at that pressure point where we could charge a little more on some things to offset these upcoming
Yeah.
replacements?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I actually feel like we could go up to $1,200 an hour and still fill it. If we go to $1,200 and sell half of our rental blocks, we've still made the same exact money as past years, and we have open spots that could be filled. So I truthfully think that number could go up.
Good idea. Why? It's not about money for most of those people that are renting, it's the
No,
opportunity.
we're not catering to families and
These are a lot of
groups. These are
businesses.
companies and organizations that can spend the money, so.
What would you do if we increase the entry fee just $1?
We've increased the entry fee. I think we did $1 recently. It was at $5 for Lindon residents, or I'm sorry, for non-residents. We're now at $6.
That's what I understand.
And
then
so,
remind us again how many turns we get, people?
sorry, what was that?
How many people in a year?
We go, it's like 75,000 people come into the pool each year, somewhere between 75 and 78,000 over the past couple of years.
Dollar increase, it would help, but it wouldn't make a huge difference.
10%.
Yeah, something to keep in mind with the pool, it will always be subsidized. And so we can do things to make some headway with revenue, but you will subsidize this. When you factor in the bond payment, you will subsidize this to the tune of $1 million every single year until 2035. That's just the reality of that. I think it's 2035-ish when it's done, or maybe it's 2040. It's out there a ways, and so we have yet to have a year that actually our revenues cover our operating costs for the 4 months that we're open. So it is subsidized 100%. It is, and again, don't want to make this sound too negative. It would save the money. It would save the city money if we never opened it. It really would. It costs us to open this facility. So I want you to know that. So as you're making decisions on this, that's a reality of having a swimming pool as a public amenity. Can we make it better and more fun and keep it operating to where it doesn't fail at some point? Yes. And so I think that's what we're trying to do.
We may be a little bit off topic here, but I think last year we put in a very expensive slide. Are there any other plans going forward, other amenities that would cost us a chunk of change?
Included in this is that additional funding for the bridge. We're getting a bridge, but in the future, I don't see, unless we're planning on additional slides, there's nothing more major that is going to, that we have discussed going towards the pool besides some of these other amendments like a new bridge or additional things in the concession stand. There's nothing very large in the works.
Didn't we do the locker rooms and
the flooring?
The flooring and all that a while ago we didn't we?
Yeah. So I think we're just finishing up the rest of the floors being redone from that old red stamped floor to a more flat with shark grip. So I would say, copying off of what Adam said, I think what has been said was originally when the council voted, they we're told subsidize $150,000 every year on top of your bond payment. And what we are trying to do is decrease that number so your subsidy is less. That's all we're trying to do on some of these things. But some of these, I believe actually, that floor, the Murtha lining was, it's between 10 and 15 years. So we've gone outside of our use. We're kind of just making it. And so this phasing is what we're trying to do, so that way we can fix what's bad and then take care of the rest later. But
Well, Alan, thank you for all you do. You have given unbelievable heart and soul to make this pool
pool.
work so hard.
Love
Thank you.
Alan, for all the things you
The
love
pool.
about Lindon.
All right, council, this is a public hearing, so, okay, oh, I'm sorry, Kristen is not quite complete.
Alan, could you also give an overview of the concessions
Yeah.
remodel?
Yeah, so,
Is this line item number 14?
yep. So that item, what we have done is, over the years, we have just kind of made it. When I got my degree in forensic science, I wasn't in concessions or budget or anything like that. So what we've just kind of made it work, but as the public comes in, it is a no outside food and drink location. We don't allow outside food and drink. So they get in and want more and more and more, and we try and offer as much as we can, but that concession stand was built with what was in there is more of a, here's your Coke and here's your bag of chips and stuff like that. And so we've added amenities like grills over the years to what I thought was sufficient. But what we were trying to do is get someone to deliver food instead of having our staff go multiple times, actually every day, to go pick up food. And to do that, we needed to get on with a company like US Foods or Cisco, but we don't have a place to store the food. So we needed a walk-in fridge freezer or a fridge freezer location that can store what we would need to buy to work with a company like US Foods. But we can't do that without some additional things like additional power. And so in going through this process, we brought in some consultants to come look at our concession stand and let us know what we actually could use and what we need to make this better functioning. And so in that process, we've kind of created an ROI for additional concessions, amenities to make sure that we can supply what we actually are trying to sell. Every day currently there's a sign that says temporarily out of or currently out of X, Y, and Z. So to try and get rid of that, we brought in these consultants and we talked about different things that we would need to do to make sure that this works well. And so this number that we've presented includes additional machines, air conditioning, I'm sure, yeah.
Yes.
Would there be additional
Very hot in there.
places you could buy other than just the one queue that tends to back up?
Yeah, we've talked about some online, get on your phone and order it and pick up. But what we're trying to do is at least be able to make the items that people want, so that way this line can go quicker. Instead of getting up there and having to wait 10 minutes for your chicken and fries, we would have the chicken fries ready to go. And so that's what this number is, including additional power for the facility, because we're a little spent on power, and a walk-in fridge freezer that is just to the west of the concession stand.
Located outside.
Yeah, it would be, yep, outdoors. And so that shave ice shack gets pushed 5 feet over, and that walk-in fridge freezer gets placed right next to it. And it is outdoor rated fridge freezer, and the doors would be facing out to the public. So it is actually quite a large overview on this, or like a revamp on this concession stand. But with this, it would be able to help us get rid of those signs on the doors and supply what we need. I did put together a return on investment for this. Again, my forensic science degree is not in numbers, and so in my working, and I worked with Chase on looking at this, it is, depending on how you want to take the money and what we're trying to plan on, if we make the money that we're currently making, like in this past season, there is we'll say 4 or 5 year payoff, if you want to say, and this is making sure that we sell exactly what we've done plus a little bit more each season. So that's what this number is.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah.
To pay back that 139,470, is that using all of the concession funds or the amount of
Yeah.
concession funds that you think will be increased because you purchased this? That, in my
Yeah.
mind, is a return on investment.
So what we have done is we're making 14% contribution margin, or just your net profit percentage from what we buy and what we sell. And so what the 4 years is anticipating that we'll make 18% profit, because we're going to increase the prices a little bit and we'll be able to sell a little bit more product. Our biggest sellers has always been pretzels and churros. We'll make $20,000 a year on just pretzels and churros, but we can't right now because we don't have the machines to supply that. So what we're planning on doing is using, if we're saying 14.5% profit right now, the difference between 14.5 and 18% profit would put us at we'll say 4 to 5 years out. If we want to just use that profit for the next couple years, that's what that 4 or 5 years is. Again, I'm not a business person, but I worked with Chase, and Excel is great to look at that. But
This is one I just wanted to call out and wanted your direction a little bit more. And this is basically 100% remodel in the concessions area. And so is that fair?
Yeah.
You're taking out every appliance and putting in something different.
It would be
relocating, rewiring.
Yeah, there's quite a large. Some things would stay in the same place, but there is a few multiple new additional machines that go in. We keep a couple ovens. We add air conditioning. It is a remodel, pretty much, of that concession stand to try and meet what we are trying to offer. But I would 100% say that it's a remodel.
Can I ask you about the workforce that's going to be needed to be able to make this all work?
Yeah.
Do you anticipate, there's a workforce problem everywhere. So you anticipate there to be any of that to be a challenge to be able to get the?
We do very good at trying to keep our 15 to 18-year-olds, and some of these machines are a little more expensive because we're trying to make sure that they are 15 to 18-year-old proof. And so we're not putting in deep fryers. We're not putting in grease hoods. These are all ventless machines. So we're just trying to anticipate. And with this number does not include an additional staffing. What we have spent, what we are budgeting for staffing will remain the same. We're not adding additional employees in that concession stand. In fact, with some of these, we're hoping to go down and not have to have what we call a lead cashier in there helping babysit a little bit. So that's what we're anticipating.
And to answer your question, a lot of kids in the community that I know personally, they love this as a first job, and then a lot of them stay because they like it.
I guess it's
So,
to the machines, will it be, like you're saying?
yeah,
that age-
15-year-old, it's a
that-
great
that
first job. There's not a
friendly?
lot of things 15-year-olds can get hired to do.
We fill every single year. We're turning away cashiers who also work in the concession stand. So we'll have people for the cashiers and concessions. Yes, we'll make them qualified. We'll help them.
We increased the pay a couple, 2 years ago.
2020, yeah.
Are we still competitive?
Truthfully, I would say we're on the lower end again. Immediately, as soon as we increased it in 2020, so did everybody else. And then over the past couple of years, it's continually gone up, but we have not had a problem maintaining staff with our current aquatics fee schedule. And so we're doing pretty good for staffing.
It's a great environment from all the people that I know that work there, so I think that adds to the contentment, so, especially on that demographic.
Who was the consultant on this?
We brought in a couple people. I contacted a couple that I could find online from a couple different organizations, but then US Foods had a couple consultants as well that came in. They call it a team of individuals, and they brought in an operations manager and a food and service manager. One guy who runs Topgolf food areas, and so his was pretty much what we would do as well. Ventless machines, quick and easy. With all of this, we're trying to just do as much as we can to make this as simple as possible. Nothing super fancy. We just want to be able to cook the food that we have and be able to serve it in a timely manner and not have to have complaints. I would say that if any complaints we have at the pool, with this being the top, I would say in the county, it is things like that, concessions.
You run out, a lot of times you run out pretty early.
Within an hour or two, I would say within the first hour we can keep up, but then as the day drags on, out of an 8-hour day, the rest of the day is backed up until the last hour or two, and then we're caught up.
All right. And I'd like to acknowledge Caleb here as well. He is a tremendous person at our pool as well, and does
Very
such a great
helpful.
job managing all the employees and addressing. You're in the trenches, you get it. Appreciate your wisdom as well on ways to improve the operations there. All right.
Yeah, of course.
Any concerns, thoughts, are you okay with this proposal?
My only concern on that is that the consultant, they oversee the project to completion, the health department signs off on it, all that is done correctly.
I did contact the health department on all of these, and there is no need to do any additional plans or there's no additional fees with the health department. We pay, I think, a little less than $200 for our county health department fees, our license. And I contacted them with all of this, and there's no additional fees. We're not changing our scope. So this is pretty much what we're doing the same of, but just more. So with a revamp, it is adding additional power. It is adding additional machines, but it will not encumber additional fees from the county, and we don't have to submit any additional plans. We've been working with planning downstairs, and they're all good. There's nothing that needs to come forward with drawings. And so this will just be literally buying the machines and putting them in place.
Sounds great.
And the storage.
Yeah, and the storage. So that does have some drawings with it that has been submitted, and we're all good to go. So.
Thank you.
All right, anything else to present on budget amendments?
I do have one more thing here.
Of course you do.
This was an FYI, but something that I need your feedback on. So Heath had presented this to me very recently in the last week or so, and wasn't able, he's out of town, but wanted to get your thoughts or feedback on this. Thanks. So this is at the arena. He's considered and asked Ron Clegg, who's helped us out with some of the grants on this, to sketch this up. And so he was looking at some arena-style bleacher. This would be concrete block that would be stair-stepped along this hillside in this photo. The estimate on this from Ron came in my opinion, quite high, $286,000. I did not feel comfortable including this in the budget and wanted your thoughts and feedback on this. There's this smaller bleacher here. In my opinion, what I've seen Lindon Day is used for, obviously on the day of the event. I've got a few photos. Yeah, this is the night of the rodeo. I mean, yeah, we have people seated everywhere, and it's obviously would get used on that evening. I have not been privy to see events that have more than 20 or 30 other people there. On some of the smaller roping events and things, most of them are participants, and there's not typically a crowd or an audience. Is there anything else that you know of, Alan, that's?
No, I would say that the play days, the junior rodeo play days, has a crowd of 50 participants, 40 to 50 participants, and their families, and they'll either set up chairs just like this, or they'll sit in their cars, or sit around the fence, but nothing as big as the rodeo.
So I maybe need to just question Heath a little bit on the vision of this and what, I know he has talked about wanting to expand the uses of the arena and try to get some other types of events down there. He's also contemplated a second restroom that would go in the park, just off to the side. This included $100,000 on a new restroom, and so looking for general thoughts or guidance on this, and maybe this is a separate discussion item for another time, but.
Would you have to do as much? Could you scale it down the concrete terrace seating?
Yeah, I think that's feasible. Part of what he has looked at doing is, this was all torn up as part of the reconstruction on the arena, is restoring this back to a turf area. He's indicated regrade and elevate this and then reestablish the grass back in that area or put down some sort of gravel. Just me, in my opinion, I don't know why we couldn't add a couple other sets of bleachers there without doing the retaining on the hillside, but just looking for your thoughts.
I think just cleaning it up, like the gravel and making the lawn area look a little better and doing the bleachers is a great first start, in my opinion.
Well,
Okay.
I will kind of say this because I say it all the time, but if there's a way to have an accessibility area, some pads, it gets hard to go in through the gravel with any kind of need for
Okay.
people with accessibility challenges. And strollers, for that matter. Those end up having very similar problems, challenges.
It's good feedback.
Agreed. Some bleachers and clean up the landscaping, a blanket and sitting on the lawn on a slope.
That's part of the experience.
It is. Okay, it doesn't appeal to how old I am, but
Well, if you're gonna sit down, you just need to have a plan to get back up.
I think some additional bleachers would be helpful. The ones that are there are a little bit too small. Sitting on the hillside is part of the night with your blanket. I think what's also really needed is some trees for shade. The trees were taken out because they were a species that could drop branches and were not safe. But that area can be quite hot on an afternoon, so hopefully planting some trees for shade to replace that would be great.
I'd consider that, some additional bleachers and some fix-up, clean-up, do a ramp or something like that, and I don't think I'd be entertaining $250,000 right now.
Okay.
For the whole shoot match.
Okay, thank you for your feedback on that, so. Anything else, Kristen? No?
All right.
Thanks.
One last thing is just noticing at how it works with, at least at Lindon Days, if we can keep it so that there's not grass right next to the fencing, I think it would keep kids away from that. Maybe just some, even some curbing and just put some stones or something like that, gravel or something next to the actual fencing. That way kids are not sitting right next to the fence. That, I think it just helps with safety for them.
All right, that is not in the budget amendment, but that's good feedback, so that may circle back again next time in the spring, I would assume. And there might be perhaps grants that Ron can scout out as well, so we can see what happens there. All right, this is a public hearing on the budget amendments that were presented tonight. Do we have any comments or questions from our public here in attendance? All right, well, thank you. Council, I'll bring it back to you to close the public hearing, and
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
all right, we have a motion by
I'll second.
Councilmember Vanchery, seconded by Councilmember Powell. All in favor?
Aye.
We're back to the resolution here.
Can I ask for a little bit more discussion by Kristen on the note for 12?
We are actually going to do more discussion on that in the RDA meeting. So I can, if you want to discuss the $500,000 contribution from the general fund.
I know that we'll talk about it there, but it may affect my vote for this particular one,
Okay.
so.
It's fine.
So
All
if we,
right.
Up to you.
yeah.
Yeah.
just go through it.
I don't have a lot to say other than
Okay.
it's for a property purchase. So, you guys know more about that.
What thoughts do you have, Randy?
Just, if you can just maybe just go through and break it down, just discuss it out loud, just slightly.
Sure.
I'll let you do that.
Okay,
Kristen.
so the dollars, so, this is an estimate, based on what I think the parameters are going to be, that, the cost of the property will be $4,892,000, and that's based on the, square foot, cost, estimate for 8.7 acres. And then there's, the professional services is the cost of issuance for the bond. That number was supplied by LRB, and so that pays for their services as well as the bond counsel. And then, funding sources are using the fund balance from the District 3 RDA, which is no longer receiving any tax increment, but is, has a fund balance that can be used. Oh, I'm sorry.
The
It's not,
CDA,
it's the C, it's the
700
it's the 700 North CRA, and so CDA, and that is still receiving money. My apologies. And then a transfer from the, general fund to the RDA. So that we don't have to bond for the full $4.9 million. And so we're estimating it's more like 3.8 million that we're
And
bonding for.
that's
but this is-
something we're looking for your direction on how much you want to pay down that bond amount. And so we had.
Future discussion really, isn't it? I mean, is this just a
It can
placeholder,
be.
or who determines
This
those
is
two
a,
amounts?
this is a placeholder, so if
Yeah.
you wanted to change that in the future, but that's coming up. I mean,
Oh,
that's the
Oh, yeah.
end of November. We gotta have that nailed down, so.
I was literally sitting in a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown in San Francisco when I was listening in. The thing I didn't pick up on, it looks like you guys decided on a 20-year term instead of a 15?
Nothing's
No,
been
nothing's been
determined.
decided.
Okay, well, I saw somewhere in the,
There's options
Kind of-
for that.
Yeah,
They
we
were
had a-
shown a
we had a-
15, a 20.
Yeah,
Okay,
10,
but-
15, or
all right,
20 year.
but I
We
saw
were-
somewhere that it was, okay.
Not pushing, we were recommending if you chose one of those to go with that 15-year.
Yeah,
That's what we
that's what I
felt
was
comfortable
hoping
with.
we would do, but. And that reduces our debt service considerably, putting that million in, total of $1 million.
Yeah, in that last discussion, we talked about transferring $1 million even up to that amount from the fund balance. We had, in this budget amendment, we're just looking at 500,000, and so.
fair enough.
And that takes the general fund balance to 28.5% of revenues.
Pretty darn good.
Yeah, you have ability to move more over
We don't
if
wanna-
you choose to do that.
We don't want
but-
to take it too low with the sales tax kind of declining a little bit or flatlining. Also where the general fund is going to be making up the difference for the debt service payments in the future. And possibly if we, give the land or however that works.
Or
as
sell
soon-
it.
Right, as soon as we don't own the land anymore, we have to pay off the bond is my understanding.
Yep.
So we would need to have funds available for that as well.
When is the Doug Smith supposed to be open?
Ask that again. Sorry, what was your?
April or May, I think.
Spring, he said.
But some of their, their sales tax is going back to them for incentive for a little bit.
It's capped.
It's
Yes.
post-performance,
capped.
so we will receive a certain dollar amount before they would get
They
anything
have to
back
be
from
above
us.
a certain amount, but yes.
Yeah.
All right. They give the further clarification on that item. Any other questions for staff, council? All right. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion in this budget amendment resolution.
Make a motion that we approve Resolution 2023-18-R, City Council resolution as discussed tonight.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Magleby, seconded by Councilmember Vanchery. Any further discussion among the council on that motion? All right, we'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay. I'd also like the record to reflect that the only reason is note 12. Kathy, if we can put that in, my reason for my nay vote is for item 12, which has to do with the purchase of the property.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, very good. The motion carries. And then we are now on to item 13, which is to recess to the Lindon City Redevelopment Agency meeting. Yes.
Could we recess to the restrooms for just
Oh, absolutely. All right. We will take a 5-minute recess and then resume that time.
We gotta get you a Lindon hat, man. All I see is that Bass Pro Shops.
Let's buy one. We've got some, there's a car show.
Yeah, with Utah Lake or something like that. Utah Lake.
Okay, we're going,
Thanks, you guys. See you
go
later.
sit on my bed and I'll watch it from the comfort.
Or don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch something else.
Yeah, I'll get sucked into TikTok or something. There you go. I know, terrible. Okay, see ya, thank you.
See ya. That wasn't too harsh on the pool, was it? Really, you would save money if you just lock the gates and never open it again. You okay? Yep. Good. This is one of those nights I would have lost when my wife said, "Are you gonna be home early?" And I would have said, "Yeah, this is good."
Not my fault.
Yeah,
That's never my fault.
that's okay.
There you go. That's the way.
There's already one missing.
You're okay. You're all right.
Mike got a call from one of our officers saying that Lauren called them down to trespass the contractor from the property. But by the time the officers arrived, there was nobody there. But it's just like,
Legally speaking, I don't think he does.
it comes down to when you own a piece of property, look at it as a bundle of sticks. If you own it, you own it, you own every stick. But when you lease that property out to that tenant, you take a portion of those sticks and give them to him. That's how they never lose losses. And right, you give that property, you're thinking anywhere, you have the right to trespass somebody that that tenant says can be there. He gives up that right. Now, he has the right to protect the property.
To call the police and say, I'm trespassing that person who's saying, he doesn't have that authority. It's like me walking in and saying, you know, what about they're there to create a disturbance or noise or commit a crime. And so criminal history.
That's pretty funny.
I don't know, I mean, it's gonna hit the fan tomorrow. But if the officers had just called me out the blue and said, hey, owner of a building is mad at his tenant because he's got a contract with him, dude, that's totally civil. We're not getting involved in that. If he doesn't want that contract either, he needs to bring an injunction. We're not going to arbitrate. What sticks that the tenant has and what sticks with your kids.
And I make a motion, anyone want a second? No, we're not gonna come take a dog. That's the thing you gotta.
You're always out there with the organic.
Within the house to have breakfast. The dog is chewed on the stop. Right below him. You know, those little areas you just missed. And I still have that good day. Still with that chewed. I just don't know how.
I was telling those guys, this is one of those nights where I thought all those things in front of it would take like 5 minutes each.
Texted him a few weeks ago, said, what's your intention after that? He told me he was in the hospital a couple months ago. He intended to take me. That's probably
Well, if he's as bad off as he was saying with a stroke and everything, he's probably got a ton of medical bills too.
That was a lot longer than 5 minutes. Where's mine?
Me, I'm like, I already have my time, so this is what I have. I don't know what you have, Randy.
All right, we'll get back. That was maybe a little more than 5 minutes, but. All right, we will resume our meeting then. All right, so council, we had just concluded item number 12 on the agenda, and moving forward now, we were just about ready to go into item number 13, which is a recess to the Lindon City Redevelopment Agency meeting. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, your mic's off right
That
now.
motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Powell, seconded by Councilmember Broderick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now in the RDA. You can refer to that agenda. All right, so we will first begin with a roll call, and do so with an aye.
We say present or aye?
Aye. All right, and we'll start with you, Councilmember Ancheri.
Aye.
State your name and then an aye.
Pardon me.
Apo-
Mike
apologies.
Vanchery,
That's
aye.
it, but that's okay.
Present, okay.
Aye.
McAbey, present.
Carolyn Landberg, present.
Van
Aye.
Broderick, present.
All right. Sometimes we go back and forth. Sometimes it's, I'll talk with you, Brian. Sometimes I've seen the rules are the other way, but in any event, we're fine. All right, so now we will go on to item number 2. This is the approval of our minutes from our October 2nd meeting.
I didn't see anything.
I have no corrections.
If there's no corrections or additions, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 2nd RDA meeting.
All right, very good. Motion by Councilmember Vanchery, seconded by Councilmember Powell. All in favor to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Okay, item number 3, now we will go into the public hearing for an RDA resolution.
I'll make a- you need a
Motion?
motion?
Yes, please.
Make a motion to open the public hearing for this resolution.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Powell, seconded by Councilmember Broderick to go into a public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll turn this over to staff to present.
All right, so in the budget notes, this is note 12 and 13 regarding the RDA. Note number 12 is regarding the property purchase from the 700 North CDA. That's receiving $500,000 from the general fund and bond proceeds of $3.8 million to pay the cost of issuance, estimated at $70,000, and the property purchase at almost $4.9 million. And these are placeholders. Later, we'll be discussing the bond parameters, and then in another month or 6 weeks, then we'll be looking at the actual bond and actual numbers. But these are placeholders for the budget amendment. And then on 13, note number 13, this is the $250,000 from the District 3 RDA, and that is for a development agreement with Doug Smith Kia. Are there
All
any
right.
questions?
Any questions, council, regarding these pledges?
I have none.
All right, this is a public hearing. We invite any questions or comments from the public at this time. All right, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Powell, seconded by Councilmember Magalby. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, bringing this back to you, council, on these RDA fundings.
Any discussion?
Any more questions about the purpose of the funds or the placeholder? They're a placeholder for further scoping of the actual
Yep.
bonding and nature of what that will potentially look like. Okay.
I will ask for that as we move forward, that those options come to us multiple days before we make the decision in advance. So we don't get them the afternoon that they're coming. Give us some time to process them, if you would, please.
Yeah, let's talk about that some more. So, and in fact, it may be better on the next agenda item because we'll be talking about the parameters resolution of when those numbers will be coming to you. So hang on to that thought, Van.
Okay. Well noted. It's a good thought. All right. Any further question for staff regarding or discussion among council? All right, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-5-RDA, approving the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget amendments as presented.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Magalby. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Councilmember Vanchery. Any further discussion on the motion? Then we will bring it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay, and I'd like the record to reflect it's for that same reason for note 12 regarding the purchase of the property, please, Kathy.
All right. That brings us to the end of the action items here on the
Oh,
RDA.
we've got number 4.
Number 4. All right, then we'll go on to, here we have the interlocal sales tax pledge. Well, hang on.
This is still in the
This is,
RDA.
okay, this does not require a public hearing for item number 4. So this is just a review and action. Anything to
Just stick
present here by
around.
staff?
Yeah, okay.
So it's a parameter resolution, so we can bond up to 5 million, but we're not
Correct.
obligated to bond for that much.
Correct. So by what is being set up here tonight is you're setting the upper limits or boundaries and talking with Jason from Lewis LRB, Lewis Robertson Birmingham. So he had recommended a certain limit on dollars and then also on the percentage of possible interest rates that he felt would be within the window of when we're trying to secure this. So 5,000 being the upper limit, 6.5% being the upper limit on the interest rate that we would have. So Van, your question of giving timely notice, our intent right now, so we've got two meetings in between now and when we would basically adopt this. And so we have I believe it's a 30-day public notice period. We have to hold a public hearing, and what this parameters resolution is doing is saying, here's the upper limits that you're approving. Now we're gonna go out to the market, try to find the best deal we can, and then we're gonna gather that information and bring it back to you on November 20th. And after that 30-day period, we would take public comment. That would be a public hearing on the 20th. And if you're comfortable with those numbers that you would have in that staff report, then we have a vote and you choose to move forward or not. And so then there's only another 7 or 10 days and we close.
Right,
So-
but will there be input and discussion for how much goes down to determine what the yearly payment's going to be? That's the discussion. I want some time to be able to think about
Okay.
it before a meeting, to be able to run numbers myself some.
Yeah, so that would be on November 20th. And so my hope is that we would have some numbers to you as soon as possible, but very likely it's gonna be similar to a normal staff report. It's gonna be 4 or 5 days ahead of time.
And that will be fine.
Okay. And so, but yeah, a lot of this depends on what they can wrap up with lending institutions and making sure that we have time to vet all of that ourselves too, so. Any questions on the parameters resolution? There's a lot of documents here. What
100 pages.
what's that?
100 pages was given to
Yeah.
us on Friday night.
I understand. And so what you're adopting is those as exhibits. Most of those documents are exhibits saying that this is what we are going to review public in November. And you have now 30 days to review it and provide public comment in that November meeting. So you're not adopting anything other than the parameters of going out and trying to secure the bond tonight, and then the notice for the public. So if you have one caveat that I did throw in to Jason, I want to make sure our park tax passes, and that could financially change our situation at the city. And so they had originally on the calendar that you saw in our last meeting, they had closing on the 21st, the day of the election.
It passed.
Closing on this bond. And so I asked them to bump that closing out another week or so. And so it would give us at least a few days to finalize numbers and make sure that the park tax passes. And that would be a significant financial change to us, so. Other than that, what questions do you have on this?
Question/comment on the fact that I remember years ago, I don't know if it says we were forming the CDA. I remember Lewis, or when they used to have a Y in it, LRB. They came and we met in the downstairs conference room, and we got a big education about all of the terms that were going into place. I think that's where I'm feeling unhappy about all that information that came through. Didn't give me enough time for this. Not to say that I actually need it, but I do think that we need to have an opportunity either here in council chambers with LRB to be able to ask these certain things directly. I think that an education would be good for anybody that might have questions to be able to ask them to their face. But I remember that being extremely helpful at the time, and this was pretty unmanageable for me to be able to go through because it's not something I'm familiar with, so.
Okay. I have asked Jason to come to our meeting on the November 20th, so he's planning on that. He's available by phone if you had a specific question that we can't answer.
Yeah, I wasn't
Happy
even
to call
able
him.
to, enough time to even formulate my questions for
Okay.
tonight, so.
I think along those lines, my only concern would be if we have assurance that, again, all this is a parameter resolution.
Right.
It doesn't bind us to anything. It doesn't require us to do anything. We could back out if we need to or want to.
You can back out up until closing,
Up until
and
closing.
you may have some
Yeah.
fees for their time and services. That $70,000 was their total cost for financial consultants, and then going out into the market, securing everything, and then they have a legal bond counsel that actually puts together all of this information.
Well, if you can,
So-
if you can say that that's the case, I don't need
Yes.
to read all 100 pages, so.
All right,
Keep,
council.
keep in mind, we only got the direction to do this 14 days ago, and so Randy, just
I got it.
just reminding you, okay,
I know.
this is fast,
Moving quickly.
so.
That's what I don't like.
Well, hopefully with much of this, being parameters, as we say, this is a placeholder. This is to then go out and do the due diligence, essentially, is what we're looking to do with this document. So any further questions? I'd entertain a motion if anyone is ready to do that.
It's gonna be that side of the table for sure. Oh, we already voted on this whole thing.
I will make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-6-RDA, which allows us to enter into an interlocal sales tax pledge agreement and parameters resolution as presented and discussed.
I'll make a second on that.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Vanchery, seconded by Councilmember Magleby. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay, and I'd like the record to reflect it, that's for something that I did not vote for, I don't want to go forward with even a placeholder. So thank you, Kathy.
All right. Okay, that concludes item number 4. So we're ready to adjourn the RDA and reconvene the Lindon City Council meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the RDA and reconvene.
Second.
All right, motion by
I can at least do that.
Councilmember Powell, seconded by Councilmember Broderick. All in favor?
Aye.
Right. We are now back into our Lindon City Council meeting, and we are on item number 14. This is a review and action regarding our interlocal sales tax, what we just did in the RDA now.
So this is similar to what we discussed in our meeting a couple of weeks ago. The city is acting as the backstop for this purchase within the 700 North CDA. This is noticing the public of our upcoming public hearing in November and creating an interlocal agreement between the RDA and the city where we are pledging funds to the RDA purchase that is being acted upon. So very similar, there's a resolution that indicates the city is entering into this agreement and then has exhibits of the documents that will be adopted in November and reviewed in that public hearing.
All right, any further questions, council? All right, this does not require a public hearing, so if no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to move forward here on the agenda.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2023-19-R as presented.
I will second that.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Magalby, seconded by Councilmember Vanchery. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Nay. And Kathy, can the record please reflect that it's the same reason, but I'd also like to add, my main concern is that because I'm not here to help have my thoughts and to continue past December, that's one of the reasons that I have been consistent in my vote from the time that I said no to the purchase.
Okay, duly
Thank you.
noted.
Thank you.
All
And I
right.
do want this to be successful for our Lindon Town Village. So I'm just not there to be able to be there, so. I
All
need to
right.
stay consistent.
Okay, council, we've gotten through now to item number 15 here at the end of our agenda. This is also review and action for a communications use agreement presented by Mr. Cowie.
So this is basically it's very similar to a franchise agreement where this is a fiber optic company, L3 Communications. They actually work under the umbrella of Lumen Technologies, if you've heard of them. They had this very similar agreement in place for the last 10 years. This contractually obligates them to meet certain performance standards, but that gives them the right to locate their utilities within our public right-of-ways, and then they pay a franchise fee back to us. And so this is renewal for another 10-year period. Pretty straightforward here, so no concerns or issues.
All right, we do have numerous of these types of agreements throughout the city, and so it's any questions from council for staff regarding this particular agreement? All right. Well, who would like to finish us up tonight?
I don't have verbiage.
I'll make a motion to approve the L3 Communication Use and Agreement as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Powell, seconded by Councilmember Broderick. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously.
Oh. Motion to adjourn. He was acquiescing.
Second.
I wasn't.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Powell, seconded by Councilmember Magalby. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are done. Thank you, everybody.